Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves.
Oh, yeah, there it is. You heard the intro music. That's as close as we could get to Guns N' Roses without copyright infringement.
Welcome to the suburbs, baby. You're gonna die.
Oh, my God. All right, this is Scott Groves. And first, we're going to put a disclaimer out there for the On the Edge podcast. This is going to be a not safe for work episode. So if you know Scott Groves professionally from the mortgage world or the coaching world, or maybe like a trail life for young Christian men, this is definitely not the episode that you should listen to. My longtime and most offensive friend, Mike Eaton, who is a actual working comedian, making money, making a living doing that shit now, is here in Vegas for Skank Fest. So that should tell you everything you need to know about the fact that if you have kids around, go ahead and turn this off. If you still want to have...
teach them shit.
No, if you still want to have respect for me in the morning, go ahead and find another podcast where we interview some business professional. But if you want an hour and a half of some good laughs, chime in for Mike Eaton because we are pumped up for the show.
Why would it make them lose respect for you as a professional? Because you also have fun.
Yeah,
we fuck around.
You know, there's fun, and then there's sometimes a line that we can step over in the presence of Mike Eaton that some people might not find interesting. But first of all, tell us why you're in Vegas. We're recording this. This probably won't be out for a couple of weeks, but we're recording this October of 2022. What are you in Vegas for?
So I'm here for Skank Fest. So Skank Fest is probably the biggest live comedy festival in the country, which means therefore the world, because fuck all the other countries. They're bad
it sounds like a 1990s ska concert, like the Black Sheep should be, or the Black Kennedy.
Pick it up.
Dead Kennedy is a Black Sheep. Yeah, they should be definitely playing.
I know. I should have on a fucking checkered skirt, like hat and everything. No, which is funny because I have a online feud with the ska community.
What? What?
I tweeted once that if you replace the trumpets with steel drums, that ska and reggae are the same thing.
Sounds fair.
And I think I'm right. And then this guy that's like Ska Tune Network explains how that makes me a racist. And then I was like, well, you're going to die nameless, so have fun being super into ska, loser. And then he comes back at me, and so I'm just digging it, just roasting this guy for being a ska fan. And then he's retweeting, like, quote tweeting all my shit. Like, look at this fucking asshole saying to me. And I was like, your personality is ska. How are you taking the moral high ground, you fucking loser?
Yeah. This is kind of like Rage Against the Machine requiring everybody to have vaccination cards, where they're like, we're against the man, we're against the system. Playing this weekend in Orange County must have vaccination cards. It's like, okay, first of all,
must show proof of booster.
Who in Orange County is raging against the machine? You're showing up in a Land Rover to talk about sticking it to the man, and then you have to have your vaccination card?
That's all it is, though. That's all the fucking, all of the anti-establishment shit. Once they become wealthy, they no longer mean it. Because they're like, it's fucking killing in the name. Why don't we kill the poorest, though? Because they're kind of in the way of killing in the way of. Yeah.
Totally, right? It's like you can no longer complain about the system when you're in the 45% tax bracket. You got all new problems.
Yeah, man. Which, dude, those sound like such fun problems. I'm so sick of rich people telling me this shit like, you know, more money, more problems. Yeah, go fuck yourself. I'd love to worry about how I'm going to do tax evasion this year. My bad. I'm busy worrying how I'm going to afford to keep up my obesity so that my act makes sense. You know?
Yeah. How many of your jokes do you think you lose if you got real thin?
Honestly, like 2 or 3.
Yeah, because you self-deprecate a lot, but it's not like this silly physical comedy like Chris Farley where you're making fun of yourself being fat. Like, you got a couple good one-liners in there to break the ice, but I think it'd still be funny if you're skinny.
I don't even use those anymore. Oh, but the problem is being a fat guy, especially like a big fat guy, fat when it combined with like a smile is jolly. And that immediately has like a bunch of archetypes in our brain that are connected to all of the media that we've seen. So when you see a fat person, like if they are in a happy context, you immediately have a rapport. You've got fucking 20 years of Santa programming in your brain that's like, oh, he's jolly, you know?
Yeah.
So my stage presence, I've had this conversation with Eli ad nauseum because he's a 6'4" Jew with abs. And so he gets
super
up there,
buff, looks like an MMA
He's up there
fighter.
looking like Hitler's regret, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, if he'd seen them, maybe he would have changed his mind, you know? Right. But so that's Eli. So when he tells these mean jokes or says crazy stuff on stage, he has a different barrier to overcome because the way that the audience views that is like he could potentially be a threat. a lot of the guys in there are like, well, I gotta look tall so that my girlfriend doesn't try and fuck this guy.
Right.
But they see me and they're just like, ha, 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 fatty.
Yeah, no threat.
At all, yeah.
Yeah, no threat to the
That's
women.
what they think. But
I actually do remember we saw you in the belly room when you were when California was open and doing comedy.
Yeah, when
do you
it was a
remember
real
that?
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when California was a real place. So you were doing your set at the belly room, and there was a guy that went on right before or right after you. Tall, super handsome, super buff, long hair. I just remember he had this one funny joke about somebody coming into his hotel room and he thought he was all tough and he would do like the James Bond, John Wick thing. And he's like, instead what I did was I pulled the sheets up around my face and I was like, I think you have the wrong room.
Yeah.
And it's like, my wife walked out of there in love with that guy. And I was like, well, fuck you, Mike. I didn't bring my wife to your comedy show so that you could fall in love with some hot guy on stage who's like teacher by day, super hot comedian by night. I was like, I couldn't laugh at that guy, although he was pretty funny in fairness.
It's Lachlan Peterson.
Yeah.
LACHJW on Instagram.
Yeah, shout out to Lachlan because that joke, it's very rare that a joke sticks in my mind if I go see a comedy show live and I'm not like watching it on Netflix 5 times. But that joke about the hotel room, that landed so hard. I was like, oh yeah, every guy thinks they're tough until all of a sudden somebody comes into their hotel room in the middle of the night. You're like, oh, sir, I think you have the wrong room.
Yeah.
Like, it was so good. But that's interesting that the audience has more rapport than with you because you got a few more LBs in the middle.
So another thing that's interesting there. So I was talking to Tone Bell, who you may know from Disjointed on Netflix. He's got a couple new Netflix shows coming out in a couple months. Very funny comedian. Has been on Showtime, HBO, all that shit. He just moved to Austin not too long ago. And he saw me perform a couple times and was like, oh, hey, this guy's good. So he had me feature for him. So that means there's a host, and then I do 20, and then he does his 45 to an hour. So I worked with Tone a couple times, and I have like a really great time. And he's so cool because he's one of those headliners that, even though he has a lot of credits and has every reason to be an egotistical asshole and be like, I don't have time for this, is like, yeah, let's chop it up. Let's talk about, this is what you're doing that I see could improve, stuff like that. But the thing that's become most interesting to me in like this phase of my comedy career, I spent so I'm 4-ish years in. May was 4 years for me, so almost 4.5. They say it takes 10 to get good at comedy. And that's, I think, like an outdated notion in a little bit because you can go up so much more now, and there's so much more to watch and to learn from. And I mean, there's new Netflix specials coming out every day of people, and you can emulate their style and learn from what they're doing. But being funny, it ends up really only being about 20% of what it takes to be a good comedian, which blows my fucking mind because you think, like, what is the most important thing about being a great comedian is being funny, and it's not, because funny just gets your foot in the door. I see a lot of parallels with other business stuff where it's like just being competent at the business aspects of your business will get your foot in the door. But if you aren't personable, easy to be around, easy to work with, willing to travel, humble, there's a lot of these other things. Being memorable and being able to shamelessly self-promote are two things that end up mattering more than how funny you are. If you're on a 1 to 10, you're a 6 on a funny scale, but you're a 10 at promo and 10 on memorable, you're going to be on Netflix in a year. But if you're a 10 on the funny scale, but you're just another plain white guy with pretty run-of-the-mill jokes, you can probably go and do shows all over the country at little bars and stuff like that, and you can travel around and you can travel by word of mouth that people know that you're funny. But if you're not unique and you don't bring something extra to the table and you're not moving tickets, then who gives a shit? Right. So like that was one of the things that Tone was teaching me, is that not only does he of course the prerequisite is that something be funny, but for him it's more important that it be memorable. And then he creates a moment, like what you were saying, what Lachlan did, the juxtaposition of this big, tall, like Jason Momoa looking guy.
Yeah. Super buff, super
pretending
good
to be like a scared woman in a hotel, where you're like, that's such a simple and relatable and, like easy to digest joke that had enough impact that you remember it even 2-3 years later now.
Right.
So like those memorable moments are part of the reason that Lachlan, like, you know what he looks like, you can figure out a lot about him. So that is one of the reasons that Lachlan's been successful.
It's so funny because I can't tell you how in my head I'm so pumped up to hear this because, I've sat at some dinners with you, one famously at Del Frisco's steakhouse bless our waitress's soul.
Yeah,
She's
R.I.P.
since passed.
Sania.
I know, Sania. Oh, she was the best waitress ever. We'll tell that story in a little while. But you're definitely funny enough. Like, the hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life is basically when you're in improv mode. And because I know you personally, I was always worried about, fuck, man, is the work ethic there? All the time required to do the writing, all the time required to do the self-promotion and the crafting of your persona, which is the memorable part. And like, I'm pumped to hear that without anybody telling you, or without somebody on the outside of comedy telling you, you're self-aware enough to be like, all right, dude, I'm really funny. But now I've got to put in all of the work to move up the food chain.
And the other thing too is I've got to stay getting funny because I'm really funny now, which means, but so like I got to open for Louis C.K., which is a fucking dream.
Yeah. That's like the highlight so far, right?
Yeah, that's the highlight of my life, dude.
Yeah.
It's fucking so, and the poetic nature of it. So in 2017, before I got like really serious into comedy, that was the first year that I W-2'd 6 figures on like what I made that year. I was traveling.
Back in a real job.
Yeah, back in my real job. And I was like super into the Front Row Foundation and John Broman, all of them. And I decided like, I feel really good when I'm helping other people, but I don't like have anything that like identifies myself. What do I like? It's like, well, I like music. I like comedy. So I went and I would spend as much as it took to sit in the front row of all my favorite comedians and bands. And I did that all of 2017. So I got to see Rogan, John Mulaney, Tom Segura, Chris D'Elia. I saw Third Eye Blind and got to meet him, like Whitney Cummings.
By the way, it still cracks me up every time I hear a Third Eye Blind song and I have to think of you. Because to me, I'm like, yeah, I like their music. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. Yeah, oh my God. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, but it's like, wish you would come back down the ledge, my friend.
Yeah.
It's like every time I hear that, I'm like, the fact that that is Mike Eaton's favorite band cracks me up. Like, I don't know what. One day I'm gonna go with you. You're gonna get a Third Eye Blind tattoo. I'm gonna get a Guns N' Roses tattoo. Oh, there he is. So yeah, I had to stop and say how funny that makes.
Oh
me.
yeah, dude, it's dumb. But so I went and saw all those bands, but still at the end of the year, I was like just ready to put a gun in my mouth.
Because you hated your job. You hated your day-to-day.
I hated my job. I hated what I was doing with my life. Everything was just a waiting game. Like it was literally like I remember distinctly having this feeling until I was doing comedy. I wish I could wake up 10 years in the future so that I knew what I was supposed to be doing. Because it was just like, this is so fucking boring. I'm just treading water. I'm just trying to make money, to spend money on more things to distract how miserable I am making money. I'm playing volleyball to try and stay in shape. Yeah, it's just like a miserable existence. And the one person I had bought tickets to see like 4 different times, and then every time it had fallen through where I'd have to cancel for work or the show would get canceled, was Louis.
And then he got canceled.
And then Louis gets canceled. And I'm like, I'm never going to get to see this guy fucking again. And so that was, I had kind of just decided that like my priority is my career. So I travel for my career. That's the only reason, because it's expensive for me to go out of state and it's expensive for me to go places. I don't really make much for road work comedy. Comedy doesn't pay shit until you start having passive income from it. And I'll get there, but I'm not there yet. So I'm in that place, and I'm like, fuck, I really want to see Louis, but it's not going to probably pan out. He does a specific tour to prepare his material, and that tour does not include Austin. The closest he would be is like Zany's in Nashville, and it's like, I don't know if I'm going to go up to fucking Nashville just to see the show.
Because your first 10 years of comedy, you're literally counting gas money. You're like, can I drive out to that show? Like, it's a rough existence, because I know we've talked about it.
I'll tell you right now. So I'm going to get back from Skankfest on the 17th. On the 18th is my day off, where I don't have to do anything except laundry and prepare. The 19th, I drive to Lubbock, which is a 6-7 hour drive. At the day of the 19th and 20th, I will do stuff in Lubbock. And I'll have work like day job work that I'll do. The 20th at night, I will drive back to Austin. And then the morning of the 21st, I will drive 7 hours to Oklahoma City, where I will do a 10-minute set twice, and then another 2 10-minute sets the next night, and then 2 20-minute sets the night after that. And for all of that, I get $300.
So you work all weekend. You will travel round trip around 15 hours. Mm-hmm. You'll have to pay for a hotel room, pay for food. If you're lucky, you'll net about $8 from this trip.
No, I won't net any. I will lose money because a hotel for 3 nights is.
And gas is like $19 a gallon now. So
gas is not bad because I bought the Prius.
Oh,
that
okay.
was my one. Like,
and you live in Texas.
And I live in Texas, and we've got fucking Wheelie Magoo, our fucking retard governor keeping our oil prices down. But so all of that, like I'll go and grind and I'll do that because what that represents for me is one, I'm going to get at least 5 or 6 new YouTube subscribers, followers out of that. People that are going to watch my other content and they're going to be possible fans. Because out of that many shows, there's going to be at least one at every show that's like, I fucking love this guy. If not more. That's just a conservative estimate, is that one at every show loves me. So like those translate longer in lifetime value than the money I could get paid for this now. Yes, I would like to make more. And if the shows sell out and it's a cool headliner, maybe I'll get a bonus, which happens from time to time. But they pay me in free drinks, right. And I can probably find a comedian there whose couch I can crash on.
Oh,
but it's just like, it's so bizarre to be 31 and at the most popular comedy festival in the world have a special that, everybody a mutual friend of ours showed it to Danny McBride.
Nice.
Who fell off the couch laughing at it. Like, that's fucking wild. So like I'm that good at comedy and I can crush in all these different places and yet, I'm so poor. It's just such a wild dichotomy of that. But I've never been happier. That's the big thing that's different about pre-comedy. I wanted to wake up 10 years in the future so that I knew what I was supposed to be doing. And now when I wake up, I wish that I had started sooner.
Does it still suck to be broke? Like, are you okay? Like, are you mentally okay? Because, every comedian I've ever met, and I've met a few of them, and then you hear the stories about many of them, there's something going on under the covers, right? There's clinical depression or, there's famously some drug abuse with a lot of comedians that have OD'd. Like, are you
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have drugs. That's crazy.
There's some caffeine, there's some CBD, there's some nicotine. Are you okay being broke?
When you train Muay Thai, one of the best things you can do is kick a metal pole over and over and over again, and it hurts your shins really bad. And then eventually, your shins are harder. I have been broke for a fucking decade. I have almost gotten evicted from places from not being able to make rent. I've had to charm my way through paying rent late. I've had to borrow money. I've had to title loan. I've had to take fucking super predatory loans. I have a credit score that's lower than my blood pressure. It's financially I am derelict, but I've gotten used to it and I make do with what I have because I know and I get some pretty good feedback from people around me that the path that I'm on is just one where it's going to be that way until it isn't.
I think we should just hit up every comedian who's a registered Democrat or is a socialist and just be like, hey man, you're successful. You've got to give a little to Mike Eaton because that's what a good socialist would do.
And this is one of the strangest fucking phenomena is that the most generous people in my life are all very right-leaning, like people that the woke mob would be like, no, like you're bad. But those are the people that have done the most to advance my career, and my life, and make financially possible. Like a lot of them are very right leaning, and then the people in comedy that tend to do quite a bit and help people tend to be in that kind of faction as well. But the issue with that kind of mentality of we should take all of the socialist comedians and make them donate money or whatever, is that even at the very upper echelon, money is not as beneficial as what they could do for me outside. Money's great. If Rogan took me on tour, the money from that would be great. But for Hans Kim, who's the golden child success story right now of comedy, a year ago he was living in his van. He becomes a regular on Kill Tony from going there and crushing, and then also being just fully into and embracing the character because they bully and punch, and you got to accept some of it and punch back and understand that's your role. Your role in that is that you're the comedian that comes up on stage, you tell your jokes, and then they're going to be like, hey, Hans, how was your week? And then you have to autistically answer how silly your week was and talk about all stuff. And he's figured it out, and now he's opening for Rogan. He lives in a house with two of the best comedians in the world. He's got a Rolex. His life has changed dramatically from playing in that role and everything. But that's what it's comedy. You're broke until you aren't, and then you just have to keep doing it.
Can you explain the Kill Tony format? Because I've seen you on this a few times. Mm-hmm. I love it, but it's not it's different than what people are thinking of when it comes to a comedy show. So give a plug for Kill Tony, and then we can tag him in the reel and stuff, and we can start working towards your persona. But no, tell us the Kill Tony thing, because I love it. I think it's genius and hilarious, and it's not normal.
So the premise of it is Tony Hinchcliffe is a very funny comedian. He's also one of the best roasters in the world. He's incredibly quick on his feet. And then Brian Redband, who helped start Joe Rogan's podcast. So Tony and Redband sit at a table, and then they'll have 1, 2, sometimes 3 guests who will come and join the show, who are famous touring comedians or up-and-comers that you need to know, but people that are already established, making a living, like sometimes world famous, like Ron White, Joe Rogan. Sometimes they're up-and-coming people that you should know, like Ryan Long or Brian Simpson. So like those people will come on. David Tell, Greg Fitzsimmons were just on recently. I went on an episode with Akash Singh, and I did another one with Theo Vaughn. But the premise is there's the comedian panel. That's great comedians. And then you have so there's a bucket, and everybody signs up and puts their name in the bucket. And then Tony draws a name out of the bucket, and then you get 1 minute of stand-up. And in that minute, you get uninterrupted silence, and then they play a noise, let you know the minute's over, and then they interview you, and they critique. If it went really bad, they'll just fucking shit on you right there. Like, what the fuck was that? If it goes really good, they'll, try and get to know more about you. But it's really just a very small sample audition. But because it's only a minute, they encourage people. Like, that's a lot of people's very first time to ever do it. And it's a really high stakes way to start because there's 300 people. And online, there will be, up to 30,000 watching live when that happens. So it's like, that's a lot of pressure. And generally, like, someone you very much look up to is sitting right next to you, watching you do this.
Right. And to get right into a decent, like, comedic moment in a minute, that shit's hard.
It is. I mean, it's a completely different muscle from a lot of what I work. A lot of my jokes now are stories where I have, 4 or 5 minutes of the same theme. And there's 35, 40 jokes in there. But those are all building blocks and pieces and funny, wordplay that I've done to get to the end of the story and then call back pieces. But that's what's good, and that's really awesome, and it's a 5-minute chunk, but a minute of that isn't going to be as funny as if I just dedicated to finding a minute of funny stuff. So you got to kind of write for it and have some stuff prepared. And like, it's a lot harder than it looks and sounds to go up there and be funny in a minute and then to be interviewed and be in the moment and funny and affable up there on stage. So that's what they do, and it's the #1 live podcast in the world.
So it's funny because I've watched it many, many times, and you're right. When you say critique, it's like somebody will finish their minute, and Tony will just be, oh, hey, good shot. There's no hope for you. Get the fuck off stage. And I'm like, oh, my God, you literally just crushed some dude's dreams. And then with you and other comedians that actually deliver, there'll be some fun banter back and forth, and he'll make fun of your appearance. And it's like, it's fun. It's really entertaining to watch. But that's totally different than like your we'll call it your primary job of writing long form material, right? Because whether you're like one of the undercard fluffers or you're a feature or you're a headliner, you've got to have 5, 10, 20 minutes, an hour. Like when you go through like the lineup of if you do a traditional comedy club and how much time and how many jokes or, whatever the writing process is, like how long are you up on stage in the normal flow of a comedy show?
So, to further complicate that math equation, stylistically, your jokes can be very different. I tend towards more storytelling because that's what everybody that is doing stand-up comedy has at some point been in a conversation with their friends where everybody was like, dude, you're so fucking funny.
Right.
Or they've been like, oh, tell that story, or like, oh, say that thing. Like, you're quick in the moment, you're replying witty stuff, but it's all started from that. But who you're trying to be on stage is the closest approximation to that person you are when you had a couple drinks with your friends and you're in that flow state where everything you say is just fucking hilarious and you're just knocking them dead. Like that dinner.
Man.
Like when you get into that place where you realize what everyone is waiting on, there's a tempo to it. There's a real, like, this sounds so fucking dumb, but like you have an energy in the air and you are the conductor, and there are big moments where there needs to be a swell and you have to create it. And so you're like, words. And you know how it should be created. You can say something small that makes them think, oh, and then big. And they go, ah! Or you can go big right off the bat. They go, what the fuck? There's all of that. So you're trying to approximate that on stage and create a character where that is okay for you to be that person. So giving the context to that person, you can do very quickly. There's a guy named Brian Joseph who's very funny. He's a pretty controversial character. He's been banned from a few places, but he has a great joke. He just one of his shorter ones is I've been going over to this girl's house for a few weeks. I'm starting to think I should tell her. You know, and it's just like but he delivers it so deadpan, and you're just like, what? And then you realize like this guy the character he's playing is very much like Jeselnik, where it's creepy and scary, but it's funny, and what he's saying is not true, and it's so absurd that if it was true, it would be criminal,
right?
So that's where the juxtaposition is funny there, so that you can kind of wrap your mind around that. But he gives that in that first sentence context to who he is. That's why a lot of comedians start with look-like jokes when they start their set, especially when you're newer. Say, I look like this, became this, and then they're like, oh, he's self-aware of what he looks like. All right, like I get that. There's some rapport building there.
Yeah.
But so in my sets, we can literally just look at the math on it because I record every fucking set that I do. Open mic, show. So like, look, this is 2:38. Was at an open mic at
2 minutes and 38 seconds.
That was trying 2 brand new jokes that I'm trying to figure out that are just sentences that I think are funny that I just get up there and riff on, to 20 people that are all pretty hammered at 1:30 in the morning on a Friday or Monday or whatever. So that was that one. Friday I did a show. I did 12 minutes. Then the day before that I did 4:39 somewhere. So that was definitely a mic. This show I did 10 minutes. Oh, that was Filthy Show, which is like a big show, like 200 people. I did almost 11 minutes. This show, I was headlining. I did 35. This show,
35 minutes, bro. That's so long.
In Reno,
I mean, in comedy, people don't understand. Like, you know, you tell a knock joke or you have a witty quip come back to a comment. That's 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 12 seconds. Now you start stringing together 35 minutes of jokes. I mean, when people see the final finished product on Netflix of a 1 hour special, that might be that dude working on it for what, 6 months, a year, 2 years?
The most prolific people in the world, like the big deal was like the Lance Armstrong, where he just keeps winning the Tour de France in comedy, was Louis was putting out a new hour every year.
Once a year, he could come up with an hour of solid material.
He would put out an hour, and then he would start from scratch and develop new shit, and it would change forms, and then by a year later, he would have a brand new hour of worked out material.
And that's the best who ever lived. He could do 1 hour a year.
The GOAT. And then you start to see Chappelle, he took all this time off, and then, so that's the thing with, like, I think, like, the closer kind of felt a little shitty to me, and the one right before that even, but, like, the Bird Revelation, Equanimity, like, those were unfucking believable specials, and he put them out back to back. And, like, so you see, like, there are times where Dave Chappelle will get up and he'll be on stage for 3 hours. Because he thinks in comedy. So, like, they've moved on to, like, the GOAT level. Someone at my level, so in June, I recorded, and then in August, I put out, or no, I don't know when I put it out.
It was recently.
Recently, I put out my special.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we link to your special. It's on YouTube, and it's great.
So, but I put out my special. So my special is 27 minutes. The kind of behind the scenes on that is there was going to be a guy who moved to Texas who was going to record an hour. And then I was going to record my feature set for him, which, so to answer your question before, a host will do anywhere from 8 to 15. The feature will do anywhere from 15 to 30. And then the headliner will do anywhere from 30 to an hour. So depending on the length of the show, the type of the venue, and like the location of it and whatnot. And then there can also be guest spots and more feature acts. And then there are also, what are more popular now, are showcase styles, where there's 8 people all doing 10 to 12. Or there's 6 people all doing 15, or, you know, there's 4 doing 20.
So you get a good 2 hours. You basically get, like, you're seeing a movie, and you get different temperature, 6 or 8 comedians.
2 hours is about the max that you want to have a comedy show run.
Right.
Because after that, you've heard just about every iteration of every premise that's going to be funny.
Right.
And you're exhausted from laughing.
Right.
So the barrier to entry for how funny something is to evoke a response becomes higher and higher the longer you're at a show.
Right.
So to, like, crush at a 2.5 hours in on a show, like Red Band Secret Show every Thursday at the Vulcan Gas Company in Austin, which is like one of the best shows to get on. I've gotten it a couple times, and that's like the Kill Tony prize. If you do really well on Kill Tony, you crush the interview, Red Band will say, and I'd love to have you on Secret Show this week.
Nice.
That's like getting passed on Kill Tony. It's a huge deal.
That's like getting the golden ticket on America's Got Talent.
Bingo. So you're like, I get to go do the show. I did a minute so good that you believe I can do 10 to your sold out shows on Thursday. But the first time you get it, you generally will be towards the end. And there will be 18 comics, and sometimes you'll have people like fucking Rogan that'll pop in, or you'll have Shane Gillis and Mark Norman and Ari Shaffir pop in one night, or you'll have, I mean, at the very least, it'll be Tony Hinchcliffe, David Lucas, Hans Kim. We're all just fucking murders, and you'll have those people go up, and then you'll have some other good local guys like Lucas McCrary or Casey Rocket or, you know, Darian Irwin or like some of these other people like that are up there that'll go and crush, and then you go up. And this is your introduction to Secret Show.
So you might be 2 hours in.
2.5 hours in.
I'm in the audience. I'm tired as fuck. I'm probably a little drunk. I've heard every iteration of whatever's going on in the public zeitgeist.
It started at 8:15 p.m. You got there at 8.
Yeah.
You've been sitting down drinking, and now it's 11:15, and you've heard 2 hours of comedy.
And I've heard every version of the Ukraine joke. I've heard every version of the Biden joke. Oh, by the way, I just got to see my hero, Joe Rogan, who happened to pop in. And so, then Mike Eaton comes on.
Yeah, and then they're like, all right, dance, clown.
Yeah.
So then, like, you gotta really put some energy into it. And you have to have the mental toughness to know and understand that, like, hey, even if this joke is doing really well and they're having a very positive reaction, the energy they're going to give back is not going to be the same. So you got to bring that energy. And you can't overbring that energy because then there's not going to be a connection there. So you have to have the toughness and the wherewithal and the resilience on stage to tell a joke, not get a huge response, and know that that isn't an indictment of the joke, but it is rather a product of the circumstances, and that you don't need to start sweat and panicking that you're bombing.
Right.
You're building, and you got to do more, but you've got them in at least. You know, so like I've done a couple of the late spots, but if you go early on that show, it's a fucking murder box. You know, I've gotten fucking 30-second applause breaks for fucking pedophile punchlines. You know, it's just like, it's such a wild and powerful feeling to be able to make people laugh about stuff that is truly taboo and fucked up. I've been doing a joke recently about throat fucking an Alzheimer's patient in her stoma.
Oh my God. First of all, most people probably don't know what stoma is, so explain.
It's the cigarette hole you get when you smoke too many.
Why you gotta talk like this? Yeah.
Yeah, that's how she gets me over. She goes, give me that dick. Yeah. Yeah. So like, but when I am able to give context to that and deliver it, and then I say that line, and I say, I throat fucked her in her stoma, and then everybody goes, like, there's a huge, giant eruption when I say that. And then I say, I came and it went out of her nose.
Oh my God.
Let's reach in your purse and get a tissue, you know, like just that thing. There is such a raucous and insane and like a fucking what? And like girls looking at the guys next to him like, you're not allowed to laugh at that. And the guy like, I don't give a shit. You know,
right.
Like there's so many different dynamics that are playing and so much energy that's happening because I've just said a crazy divisive statement and I've made you like me so much that you think it's funny.
Right.
That's why I do it. It's like the best feeling in the whole world.
Because it's like a magic trick, right? It's like you have people going down one path and you're like, look at the hand on the left, look on the hand on the left. And then the punchline comes from the right? It's like the punch you don't see coming is the one that knocks you out. Like I can get hit I used to box a lot. Mm-hmm. I can get hit pretty hard, but if I know the punch is coming, you know, you can kind of roll with it. You can do it. Yeah. But the punch you don't see coming is the one that just really gets you bad. Yeah. And that's basically what comedy is, right?
I mean, that's a big part of it is creating expectations and then defying them. I mean, that's what it is at its basest form. But then there's also like one of the things that's really popular in comedy and is like a great hack to make a joke even better and to make something funny is they call it a callback, which is where later you will joke about something you've talked about earlier that ties them together. That is the expectation is that you've just forgotten about the shit I talked about earlier and that I've forgotten the shit that I've talked about earlier because this is all extemporaneous, which is the illusion that comedy is. Even though we kind of know that it's prepared, the feeling of it is that this is new and this is the first time this is happening like this. So when you bring something back and you're like, no, I knew what I was doing all along, it's like, oh shit, like he knows.
You know, tying this together of like the misdirection, the Kill Tony show, the how hard people work just to put out an hour of content. When you were living in town, we were living in Pasadena, close to each other. We went to the Ice House all the time, and we got to see Tony Hinchcliffe a bunch of times. And I remember he had this one joke he was working on. I can't remember, so apparently it wasn't that memorable. But I remember 3 different shows in a row, he told this long story, long buildup, and somewhere around the punchline, when we saw him, he was trying to work through, does he say that he showed up in a minivan? Does he say that he showed up in a Camaro? Does he say that he showed up in a Prius? And it's like he told this same 10-minute joke multiple times. The only variation was what car did the mom show up in or whatever. And he's trying to find like where do I maximize for laughs? And so I would ask you, like, what's the longest you've worked on a joke before you're like, that's just never going to land? Or what's the longest you've worked on something and you finally tweaked it and it was right? And you're like, yeah, now I got that pot of gold, bitch.
So, I want to say this before I forget because I have an answer for that. But I was trying to get to this earlier, and then I was jerking myself off talking about comedy. But getting to open for him, I did 2 shows. The first show I had probably like a 7 out of 10, and then I adjusted, and I was like, all right, let's figure it out. And then the second show I had probably like an 8.5, 9 out of 10. On what I rate myself personally and how my scale works, and it's too much to explain, but that's what I would say out of 10 I did. And people there all said, you fucking murdered, you killed, you crushed. All the people said I did great, but for me, I know I could have done better, so that's where I rate it. I felt that way, and then I watched his set, and he did an hour both times. He did like an hour 15, actually, on both shows, and there were minuscule differences. Literally, just like what you were saying, the difference between a minivan and a Prius, but even in a difference in how many words he used to say something, when he changes the inflection of his voice, where he stands on the stage when he tells a certain joke, just tiny, minuscule changes that he did with 30 minutes to think about it, while also talking to us and like being friendly and taking some notes and stuff. But watching what Louis did, the first show, there were several moments where I couldn't fucking breathe. It was so fucking funny. Like I just like I'm dying laughing at how fucking funny this guy is. And then to see, this is a 10 out of 10 performance. Everyone laughed at every fucking joke. Every point that you were supposed to laugh, laughed. A bunch of points where it didn't even seem like you were supposed to laugh. A bunch of people are laughing. Like it just is a murderous hour. And then he's like, I can murder harder. And then you see the second show and you're like, I've already seen all these jokes and I'm laughing harder this time. It's magic. It's insane. But so for me, I have jokes that most of my jokes come from a singular funny sentence or two, and then trying to figure out how little context I can give to that while making it funny. That's how I try to. I'll make it funny and then I'll cut the fat, and I'll do it on stage a few times. And like those open mics are super valuable. Like I'm working out a joke about Harriet Tubman right now, and that's difficult to do as a white guy.
You're a white.
Yeah, I'm very white, and it is not a pro Harriet Tubman joke.
For the people who are under 30 years old and the public school system has failed them, explain who Harriet Tubman is.
A highly overrated figure from history that ran the Underground Railroad, where she rescued slaves. For an 11-year period, she snuck them out through a series of houses. There wasn't an actual Underground Railroad. There was just a bunch of houses that she took them to, or they had secret hiding spots. But in her 11 years, do you know how many people she escaped on the Underground Railroad?
Oh, I think I looked this up one time. I mean, it was thousands, right?
70.
Shut the fuck up.
Swear to God, it was 70. And that's what I'm trying to figure out how to tell people. Because to me, I hear Underground Railroad, and I'm retarded, so I think there's an Underground Railroad. And like, she's taking all the slaves out on the fucking Underground Railroad. I was like, when did they have time to build it?
I thought it was thousands of people. I knew the thing of like, it wasn't actually an Underground Railroad. It was house to house, and they would run in the nights and get, 7 feet further away from the slave owner, and then like 7 miles away from the slave owner. But I thought she
I remember learning
thousands.
that. Yeah. So I remember when my retard got broken, I was like, oh, it's houses. They're like little stops. And then it's like, wow, that's crazy. And then I remember like she was going to be on the 20.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is fucking crazy. And like, I'll just spoil it. So this is what I'm trying to figure out how to tell people. And the joke that eventually will be very funny is that it's not an Underground Railroad. It was more like a bus stop. First off. Second off, they sent more people than that to Martha's Vineyard on planes. Thirdly, there are unnamed coyotes in the cartel right now that have moved more people than that this week.
Yes.
So, in terms of human trafficking, mid at best. Dude, she had 70 in 11 years. Those are terrible numbers. But then, so her big thing, the biggest thing she ever did is she went and worked for the Union Army. And at one specific battle, she freed 700 slaves all at once. So pretty cool. However, she had a fucking army. You know, so it's cool, man. You were quarterback of a fucking, all-pro team.
Yeah, it's like Troy Aikman. Doesn't count.
You happened to win a game. Awesome. But so then her last mission, which is like so funny to me because they gave her like 007 lines at the end of her fucking military career. They're like, your last mission, should you choose to accept it, is to free your parents from slavery. So the last two people that she goes to free are her mom and her dad. And the first person that she frees is her dad, and she sneaks him out. So then she takes her dad and then...
How fucked up that you took your dad first?
Well, it's good that she did, because this next part is where this is what I have to figure out, is this next part, because I think it's fucking hilarious. And every time I bring it up, people are like, what's wrong with you? But so she sneaks her dad out of slavery. Then she takes her dad, and then she's like, all right, Dad, wait in the fucking, they don't have cars yet, but she's like, Dad, wait back here. I'm going to go buy Mom out of slavery. So she takes the money and she goes and she's like, hey, I would like to buy the slave, price. And the guy says, I can't sell you this slave. You're a woman. So then she has to have her dad buy her mom because he's a guy for $20. And that's the bill they wanted to put her on. Like, it's her worst memory. Like, when your dad bought your mom for $20, let's make that your legacy. Like,
this is going to be such a good joke when you work it out.
That's fucking insane. But to me, the funniest person in the whole story is the slave owner that owns her mom, because he is such a misogynist that he's not even racist. He's not like, you can't buy slaves, you're a slave. He's like, you can't buy a people, you're a lady.
Oh my God. There's so many ways you could enter this joke and exit it that like are just going to get you completely canceled. And it's going to be brilliant when you figure this out.
But it's such a funny character to exist. And then it's also like just the most white people shit ever to be like, how do we honor Harriet Tubman? Let's put her on the 20. Oh,
the worst memory of her life.
Let's put Mac Miller on the 1 because he used it to snort the fentanyl that killed him. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Oh my God.
So that's
how long have you been working on this one?
Week.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 2 weeks.
All right.
It literally started all of that started with I was reading about I think it was literally just like a today I learned on Reddit about the Underground Railroad, and then I went to the Wikipedia and I'm reading through it and I read all that stuff, like 70 fucking people?
Yeah.
So I was at a show in Austin and I had written it down in my notes, but I hadn't done anything with it. And I was scheduled to do 10 minutes and I was riffing through some stuff and doing some crowd work, and I get the light at 9 and I'm like, what do I have that'll last a minute? I was like, well, I can just read these 2 funny things I've written and the other one I'm going to save because it's going to be great. But this, then I was like, and I don't know what to tell you guys, but I'm just going to read this one. Harriet Tubman only rescued 70 people. Have a good night. And it murdered. And like everybody laughed really hard at just that sentence out of context. So I know that there's something there. But so that one, like, I'm not going to be able to work on that at every show.
Yeah, that might be a little dangerous for your personal safety.
I'm at Skankfest, where they encourage crazy, fucked up, push the boundaries material. Yeah. So for the next, 3-4 days, I'm going to get to work really great on that joke. I'm going to get to work really great on my joke about how I think that all women's Ubers should be free, and that all of the women's Ubers should be free the same way that handicapped people get free rides. Because one, I believe being a woman is a handicap. Because a handicap's anything that makes your life harder. And I thought y'all's lives were harder. So women and handicap free rides, and in exchange for that, y'all don't drive anymore. It's twofer, So all the money we save on infrastructure and having to fix all the problems you cause by wrecking, you fucking cripples and females,
oh my God.
Then we just put all that into your free Ubers.
There goes my 100 episodes of YouTube channel. They're all gone now. So this brings up an interesting point, right? Because in my opinion, if I go to a comedy show, nothing is off limits. Like if I go see comedy, I know what I'm walking into. I'm not walking into a business setting. I'm not walking into a political rally. Although Trump turned those basically into comedy shows.
They're fucking hilarious.
I expect nothing to be off limits. You want to make fun of me for being fat, short, white, and stupid. You want to make fun of my wife for being tall, Hispanic. Like, I don't care. Nothing is off limits. My grandmother died of MS. The hardest I ever laughed one time was an MS paraplegic joke, right?
100%.
Because she would have laughed at it.
Well, and it's something that you have context to in your life. And
right.
But you are not everybody.
Yes. So that's what I was going to say.
A lot of people.
You have to know.
I'm retarded.
When you walk into a show, do you know the venues where certain things are off limits? Like white guys can't say the N-word. That's just a given, right?
Yeah,
that's
done.
You can't. That's done. You can't use that in your comedy show. Is there other things where you're like, oh man, I know this joke would land with 70% of the audience, but the other 30% are going to get me run out of town?
No. Well, so I've been run out of town, and the only time that I have gotten run out of town and threatened, it wasn't by the woke mob. It was by the Blue Lives Matter people. Because I was taking a stance against them. I was just saying that, like, I hate cops. And they shouldn't arrest people for weed. Like,
I mean, that's Biden's new statement. So I think you were progressive. You were ahead of your time.
I was in Georgetown, Texas, and there were a couple of
very back to
police
blue community.
there, policemen there. And they liked some of the jokes I was saying before, and they were cool about it. And then I was like, let's be honest, blue lives don't matter. Like, fuck Smurfs, right? And I was trying to say fuck Smurfs, and it didn't go that well. It's fine. But so I got run out of town by them. But so the thing about that is I being canceled is a myth. Everybody that gets canceled makes more money in the long run. The only real people there, I just learned recently about this guy, Mike Ward from Canada. He had an excellent joke about how this kid that got this Make-A-Wish thing, got this really cool experience and then just didn't die. And he's like, hey, what the fuck? We held up our end of the bargain, now you do yours. You know, like,
it's pretty funny.
It's hilarious. It's a very funny joke. However, like the Canadian like Civil Rights Council or whatever their fucking shit is called up there, sued him.
Oh my God.
And then he spent like 10 years and like $500,000 fighting this lawsuit and losing his entire fucking career over this stuff. But now he's making a comeback. So like that's fucking cool. But, like, you know, Tony Hinchcliffe gets canceled for saying an Asian racial slur. And then, you know, he has to lose a few shows with Rogan. And then he, you know, loses the venue for Kill Tony that he was at, which is like this historic jazz venue in Austin. And he's just new in Austin. And it's like, oh, this might be the end of Tony. He made this huge, daring move to leave LA and uproot and move to Austin. What if it was bad? And now he's better than he's ever been. Right. And he's got more attention. And all of the people that saw it and then understood he wasn't being racist. He was literally, the comedian right before him, the guy that he was saying all that about, was literally doing the exact same thing, but just like pandering. And so then Tony called them out for being pussies and just letting them pander to them. And maybe he went a step too far.
But that's my thing. It's comedy. There is no such thing as a step too far.
So given the context of it, though, the racial slurs are kind of like the word very. Sure, it's habitual to use them, or it might be easier to say that. But as a comedian, it's just such a cheap. It's the same thing that you make fun of Amy Schumer for. She's like, my pussy.
Oh,
like,
I can't stand her.
Exactly, because she's fucking. And everybody has their own opinions, and her old comedy was pretty good, and she does production stuff now that's great. I just don't find her comedy to be very funny. There are women that I do think are funny, and it's not an indictment of all women. However, Amy Schumer sucks shit at comedy to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the fucking girls that are like, my pussy, can you believe I do butt fucking? That's not comedy. That is just cheap, low-hanging fruit.
Right.
And people will laugh at it because A, they want to fuck you, and B, because they're retarded.
Well, to me, this is the libertarian free market in me. The market will take care of itself, right? If there's a bunch of feminists that want to see the pussy jokes and they think that's hilarious, great, she'll make a great living.
They don't. They're busy at WNBA games. You know, like
that was maybe Bill Burr's best joke of the last 10 years. His rant against like, where are all the feminists that WNBA should be killing? Yeah. But my point is like the market will take care of itself. If there's a group of people that want to see this comedy and not this comedy, then that comedian will die or survive.
The free market is an illusion, Scott. Oh it doesn't exist. Nepotism destroyed the free market.
Well,
it is way more important.
That is fair because even in your business, it's who you know, right? To help get you on stage.
1,000% it's who you know. And you know what else helps? Rich parents. If you got rich parents, you know what you can do? Go to open mics all the time. rent out venues, fly and do shows all over the country. You can do a lot of shit if you've got unlimited funding. And because you're not grinding as hard,
part of the
you're
free
just
market.
naturally going to suck shit. That's not the free market, dog. That is, I had Rich Daddy, and so now I get to go and have more exposure and more opportunity.
Rich Daddy won from the free market. Like, he made his money somewhere.
Rich Daddy went from the free market. Rich Daddy, who's Rich Daddy, owned a bunch of people.
No, there's never 3 generations of rich daddies. The Vanderbilts went broke in 3 generations.
There
but they
are
were the
still-
richest family in
There
the world.
are people you can kill in Assassin's Creed who have ancestors living in Malibu and Calabasas right now.
That's
The
kinda true.
Medici family still killing it.
Oh, dude, people don't know about the Medici family. And when I went down that fucking rabbit hole on Wikipedia and YouTube videos, I was like, this is like this.
Have you tried ketamine?
When people talk about the cabal, I'm like, oh, they're talking about the Medici family. Like, it's pretty crazy.
All of the...
Now we're for sure getting canceled. Somebody from the Medici family is reporting us.
They don't care. They've got their coffee places. They fucking...
Guys, my camera just froze. Nah, just kidding.
He's
Did
like,
a bunch of black SUVs
the
pull up?
internet went out and the NSA is here.
I'm about to get suicided by 2 shots to the back of the head.
Why? Did you make fun of Hillary Clinton?
No, not yet. No.
Oh, let's go on. Like, dude, you're so well politically inclined. I want to get your take on some stuff that's happening October 2022.
Okay.
All right, Ukraine, the war.
Don't care.
Don't care.
It's so stupid. It's all... One, why did they make a comedian president?
I know, right?
So-
for people that don't know, can you tell them the story of Ukraine's president?
I don't even know the whole story because here's what I do with politics. I start to get into an issue, and then
Get a little
I
emotional.
read about the issue, and then I figure out what's going on with the issue, and then I'm like, we're fucked. It's all fucked. There's nothing good coming from this issue, and then I just like doom spiral.
Yeah, no, you forgot the step where you argue with your friends on Telegram.
Yeah.
And insult your closest friends.
No. That's a whole different ballgame. Capitalism isn't real. The free market is dead. That's crazy fucking fallacy nuts. But. So Ukraine is getting invaded by Russia. Russia's propaganda machine is fucking killing it. Most of the civilians in Russia are for the war and have a sentiment based on just boots on the ground interviews that the Ukraine is getting what they deserve. They've been positioned as like Nazis and all of this shit. And so like they're infringing on borders. Russia's taking Crimea back, blah, 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 blah. However, then you look at the mandatory service. None of them want to go and fight about it. They're all like, hey, we think that, but we don't want to do that.
Yeah, we ain't willing to die for it.
Russia is turning out to be a lot less like China and a lot more like North Korea in terms of how good they are at military stuff because Putin has fallen prey to the same thing that like when you talk about like musicians selling out. He's surrounded by yes men, and if you disagree with him, you disappear suddenly, comrade. But
He's basically like a Russian Kanye.
it's exactly that because he is surrounded by people that just approve and build up and hype up what he's doing, and he's like, we are superpower, we have nuclear power threat, we destroy Ukrainian threats, take back, like all of them are like, yeah, dog, we're the fucking best, we're gonna kill this shit, and then any of them are like, yo, like our shit's not that tight.
Yeah.
They disappear. So like now that we're seeing reports that like they said they were attacking a bunch of military bases, and then you see a bunch of videos of parks getting blown up by missiles. Like, I don't know if it's that they suck shit at aiming or that what they're really trying to do is kill all of the civilians to punish Ukraine so that they can win the war, because then they'll just be like, oh, there's a third of the fucking country left.
Yeah.
So a third of Ukraine is gone. Like, that country is decimated. And it's crazy that there's like this like rumblings of the beginning of a world war, and that like a lot of people's opinion on it is just like, why are we sending them so much money? And it's like, man, World War I, if we had finished that and instead of like butt fucking Germany out of existence and given them money, we could have avoided World War II.
Right.
We could have avoided Hitler's entire rise to power because he wouldn't have been able to take advantage of a nation completely impoverished and wrecked by the financial consequences of World War I. So now we're looking at World War III, which is essentially just the financial effects of the Cold War being echoed, and then the new economy of China butt fucking everybody because they don't play fair. And they have a giant army of people that they have socialism into loving their country with like a diehard fervor.
Or they're slaves. You know, we're not quite sure.
What's the difference?
Right,
You know,
it's true.
It's you know, so that there's all that crazy stuff, and they've got their own little like Taiwan problems and shit, and then you see their influence in media and how much they control like American media and how their fingers are in Disney and the way that, John Cena had to apologize in Mandarin.
That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
LeBron James and his bullshit. Like, so there's a lot of that stuff that you see and you're like, what the fuck is going on? So that's why I'm like, some of the political stuff, I only view it through a comedic lens where it's like, what's funny about this? What's silly about this? Because if I get emotionally invested in it, I'll just be so sad.
Up.
Yeah.
From a comedic standpoint, there is nothing funnier than the whitest of white guys, which is John Cena, happens to speak perfect Mandarin or good enough to for white people to make it look like it's perfect Mandarin. I'm like, yeah, exactly. How does this happen?
I practice fake Mandarin all the time.
Oh my God.
I just walk around high going, and I've done it enough that there's like a couple clips of me doing it on stage, tricking people like, hey, do you guys think I can speak Mandarin? And they're like, no. And then I do my fake Mandarin and they're like, oh shit, like it's not real. Like, what the fuck? I had one on TikTok where a guy was like, I thought that you were speaking Mandarin and I just couldn't hear you. Like the inflection is perfect. You're just saying gibberish. And I'm like, bro, I got it down. Let's go.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. Did you watch any of the Kanye interview on Tucker Carlson? Because this might be the weirdest 2 hours of TV. Like, I don't watch Tucker Carlson. I don't have cable anymore. I don't watch Fox News, but some of this stuff comes up in my YouTube feed because I watch Libertarian. Chris always says, man, every time I turn on your YouTube, it's so much angrier than mine. So Kanye's up. So I'm like, okay, I have to watch this, right? Because he's fucking Kanye. And it's like he says some stuff that's brilliant. Like this one point where he's like, I don't understand why people are coming after me. If you're rich as fuck like me and you can afford to buy the house right next to your ex-wife, that's just me wanting to spend time with my kids. I'm not trying to stalk her new boyfriend. He's a fucking weirdo. And I'm like, yeah, this guy has every right as a father. And then 3 minutes later, he's like, but the Jews are trying to kill black people by making us fat. And I was like, oh, this guy is the definition of bipolar. And we're seeing it in the moment on the interview. I'm like, how did Tucker Carlson not be like, hey, bro, let's just go ahead and stop this. You need some Xanax or a Zoloft or something. Like, did you watch any of it? It's crazy.
So I've been talking about a bunch of comedians. We've all been talking about it because his tweet is one of the funniest tweets. It got him kicked off of Twitter, which is just hilarious. But he says, I'm kind of tired, but in the morning I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jews.
Death, DEATH.
Correct.
He does
and 3, not even 1.
Yeah, because DEFCON with DEF.
Yeah.
DEFCON 1 is when you're in nuclear war.
Correct. The highest threat level.
Yeah. So it goes like 5. Like we're always like hovering on 4 or 3. Yeah. And then like DEFCON 1 is like the nuke subs are on their way to Russia.
Correct. So he is wanting to say he's about to go super intense on them. And he is vaguely familiar with the terminology. He's like, yo, in the morning I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jews. And it's funny because as a black, I can't be anti-Semitic because blacks are Jew. And that's like y'all always blackballed anybody that tries to oppose your agenda. So he tweets that, gets banned. But like if you've been watching him, so I didn't watch the interview because I've been watching him just go completely fucking unhinged on Instagram for the last couple months.
Yeah.
Because he just posts screenshots of all of his texts and like all of his private conversations and him talking mad shit to people. Like it's wild. And then you see like the stuff with Gap where like his genius and his insanity and created numbers for Gap that were unprecedented and like would have saved their business. And then they just fumbled in multiple places and didn't renew any of this stuff. And it's like, if you're a company and then you create a product and that product sells at a higher price point and higher numbers than anything you've ever made, you would go back to that person and be like, what else can we do to make shit tons of money? And instead they didn't. And he's like calling that out. And like, you know, is it racist? Is it because he's insane? Is it because he's a polarizing figure? What is it? And so there's all of that stuff. So that there's all of the shadiness and his accusations of what's going on with those business deals.
There's like a sliver of truth in everything that he says, right?
A tiny piece.
Like I can't say who it is because I'll get this person in trouble. But I'll just say I had business dealings with a lady whose last name is predominantly Israeli.
Okay.
And this was in the 2008 mortgage crisis.
Mitch Jewenberger.
No, not that. But in 2008, 2009, we had become friends. I had done a bunch of business with her. And I went to her and I'm like, hey, man, this mortgage market thing is melting down. She was a big swinging dick at one of the movie houses. And I was like, could I get a job under you? And she's like, oh, yeah. She's like, you're one of the hardest working guys I've ever met, blah, 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 blah. There's no rocket science. It's this whole, production thing. Like, it's basically just project management. Mm-hmm. And then she, looked at me and, kind of put the mic aside. And she was like, but, Scott. And I'm like, no, I don't know. She's like, well, your last name's not Levine or Goldstein or whatnot. So you're going to be capped. Like you would be amazing. I can get you into a position where in a couple of years you're making $250,000, but like you're just not going to get to the multi-million-dollar level. And I'm sure this is 15 years ago. A lot of it has changed. So there's this little sliver of truth that, like, yeah, just like any other network, there's an old boys club, right? Like we bias towards USC graduates, or we bias towards jolly fat guys who tell good jokes. And like there's certain industries where there's a lot of one ethnicity. So like there's this little sliver of truth to everything he says, but he's so inarticulate because he's like bipolar that it's like, oh no, it's just racist the way you say it.
It's crazy to see. So one of the things that I think is really cool about the internet and the democratization of like entertainment is that a lot of the old boys clubs in that world are kind of getting their feathers ruffled.
Oh yeah, they're getting their ass handed to them.
But there is still like something very interesting about that, because you'll see what it used to be is like to make it in entertainment, you had to cut your teeth and do a bunch of grunt work and a bunch of bullshit, the grind. And then eventually you would start to make it and you would see some, fruit for your actions. But because of that, and like in my situation where I'm broke all the time and have to work really hard, like I'm like really working as hard as I can on comedy. That's all I got. I put all my eggs in that basket. And if that basket fails, I'm probably just going to kill myself, to be honest with you. Like there's not like, I've already done all the other jobs. I've tried all of the capitalism stuff. I've tried all the things. If it's not something I'm passionate about, it takes 2 weeks before I lose interest in it. And with the way that our economy is going and inflation and like just all of the job market bullshit, I'm not willing to go and wait tables or work at a restaurant or do something that would be lucrative enough to trade my time for. That's not going to make me just want to put a gun in my mouth. So like comedy is all I got. So because of that, I'm getting better faster. So the kind of the old world, if you're not part of the old boys club, for you to make it, like you had to get really good. And so that created like, the pressure created diamonds. And so now there's some of these people like TikTok stars get shit on a lot in the comedy world because they'll blow up on TikTok and they'll blow up on YouTube and then they'll be able to sell tickets and move stuff, but they don't have the stage presence and they haven't honed or cut their teeth on doing stand-up.
Yeah, they haven't done the reps in the gym.
So while the old boys clubs are getting ruffled, you're seeing some new people get some spots that they wouldn't have before and kind of some like disrupting of the market. There's still something to be said for like talent. And that's starting to be the like real difference maker between 15 minutes of fame and a prolonged career. Because you can have one video go viral and it makes your whole career, but if you don't have any of the shit to back it up, you're fucked.
By the way, back to my free market takes care of everything, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you get your foot in the door because you had one TikTok go viral and you've got 1 million followers now. But if you blow on stage for 15 minutes and you don't get any laughs, you're not getting invited back. Or word's going to travel faster than it ever did before. Mm-hmm. That like, oh man, this person's funny in 60-second shorts, but don't waste your $45 on her show, on his show, because they suck on stage. So it's like
100%.
Free market does kind of. By the end of this podcast, I'm gonna have a glimmer of hope that you believe in the free market again.
If the free market were to be real, I would believe in it. And if it was possible, I would be super down and into it. Like if we could have an actual free market, huge boner town for it. I just think it's naive to believe that can exist in a world like this. I mean,
can it
look
exist
at
in comedy?
GameStop. It can exist in there is a sliver of that in comedy,
right?
But here's a fact that always makes me just want to really jump off a bridge.
Call back to Third Eye Blind, by the way.
Has sold more albums than Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., and Daniel Tosh combined?
David Hasselhoff.
Jeff Foxworthy.
Well, some of his stuff's
You
kind of
might be a redneck is the literal, by the definition of the free market, best joke ever written.
Well, there's a lot of dumb people out there who like redneck jokes.
Correct, which is fine. But that's not good for art, man.
Oh, now you're an artist.
It always has been art, but it's not like the free market said this is the best joke ever because it is the lowest common denominator of the punch you don't see coming.
Right.
It's you might be like the fucking words and the like
It's a shtick. It's a characterization of like a character he's playing to be a character.
And that's the thing that I think it was Stanhope pointed it out. It's like we associate like this accent with the South, but it's not the South because there are fucking idiots that talk like this all 50 states. You know, like everywhere you go, there's rednecks there, and just like the variation of kind of redneck is different and localized. But there is somebody that resonates with that community in every part of the country.
So there's a lot of people that love him, but you don't particularly care for him. Is there some comedian that people love to hate, but you're like, no, man, he's good? Because I hear a lot of people like talk shit about people like Seinfeld or Daniel Tosh.
Seinfeld sucks shit.
Okay.
Seinfeld sucks shit, and he married a 16-year-old or whatever.
What?
Yeah, dude, he's a pedophile.
Okay, look this up, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, will you look up how old Seinfeld's wife was when they got married?
Please tell me she wasn't 16. This is creepy. Oh my god. Okay, well we'll have Chris fact check that. So oh god, I'm gonna be so disappointed. So who
17.
What? How old was he?
38.
Yup.
Oh, that's so much more than half your age plus 7. No, so much less than the famous rule of half your age plus
26
7.
would be what he was allowed. And he went 17, dog.
I think that's only
when was the
legal
last time
in
you
like
talked to a
3
17-year-old? They're fucking retards, man. They don't know anything. They have no life experience. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to come in you forever.
That's creepy. My son's 20, and we have a hard time relating sometimes to like current events. I'm like, I love my son. He's amazing. He's working his ass off. He's going to college full time. I'm so proud of him. And after about half an hour of conversation on the phone, I'm like, well, I'm out. I got nothing left to talk about. I cannot imagine, if God forbid my wife left me, I cannot imagine dating one of his friends.
Yeah. Who is a junior in high school.
Yeah. So, okay.
17, dog.
That
Fuck
really,
Seinfeld. Yeah.
really negatively affects. All right.
The show also sucks shit.
No. Now,
it was great at a time, just like Gone with the Wind was a great movie when it came out. But you can't tell me that cinematically, Transformers with Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox isn't in every metric better than Gone with the Wind.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, in fairness, we'd have to come up with another movie because I hate Gone with the Wind only because of how much my mom loves it.
Well, and also the whole fucking big point of the movie is a guy says, damn.
Right. Whoa, crazy for the time. So who else do people love to hate that you actually like? That you're like, what your guilty pleasure in comedy?
I don't know that I have guilty pleasures, but I have people that aren't as mainstream that I really love.
Oh God, you're this guy now.
No, but I love. There's not really anybody I can't think of anybody that's hated that doesn't like deserve it in some way, shape, or form.
Because I know a ton of people who hate Daniel Tosh, and then if you watch an hour of his comedy, I think he's hilarious.
He's on my Rushmore for stand-ups.
Really?
Daniel Tosh.
I'm so happy to hear this because haven't had this conversation before. Tons of people love to hate on Daniel Tosh, probably because he did his like variety show.
His TV show Tosh.0, which made him a fucking millionaire.
Yeah,
and
take the money, bro.
Rips. Yeah,
take the money. But his stand-up is epic.
And he's one of those rare people that's just so fucking good at it that he started thinking in stand-up and figured that out and has found ways to work out stuff without having to do the grind of, because he did the grind for a long time. Like, don't get me wrong. When you listen to his True Stories That I Made Up album, like that one of the first ones, like he did the grind and did the mics and the shows and the touring to build the hour. But then his album Happy Thoughts, one of the best albums ever fucking made. He's an unbelievable stand-up. One of my first memories is my dad took me to see a Daniel Tosh show at the Verizon Amphitheater in Grand Prairie in Texas. It probably seats maybe 1,000, 1,500 if I had to guess. So he's way down there, real little. He has a joke where, and this is 15 years ago now at this point. He has a joke where he says that women who are on fertility drugs should just take the sign from God that you weren't supposed to be a mother. Maybe if you weren't such a cunt in your 20s, you would have been a mother in your 30s. Oh. And there are two women sitting maybe 5-10 rows in front of me and my dad, and one of them goes, "Fuck you," and stands up. The other one takes her, and they leave. Like, she's like crying and leaving. And it's just like one of those things where it was like everybody is laughing so fucking hard, and me and my dad are in tears, and this lady is just like, ah! Like, can't separate the joke from her personal life, and she just went
Right.
in a place where she could hear that right then.
Right.
But it was just one of those things where it was so cleverly written, and it was one of those things where it's like, it's kind of true, but like not necessarily. And
Yeah.
it's just like a very funny, mean way to look at that predicament that is something that's usually pretty taxing on someone. Like something that they would be very self-conscious about, like a secret they wouldn't want told at a party, that then he made into like a very
Horrible
funny, mean
joke.
punchline. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it like seeing that, like I was immediately, enamored of him, but then just listening to his albums, he has so many good jokes. And I saw him 4 or 5 months ago. He came through in May. I saw him in May. I bought tickets right away. It's like, I have to go fucking see him. And he destroyed all new stuff, fucking COVID jokes and school shooting jokes and all the new shit in his signature style. Murderous.
Amazing. Did we go to the show together at the Ice House where Bill Burr performed, or did I go with Cole? And he was like an hour late.
I was there. Yeah, I remember that one.
So the most uncomfortable I've ever felt at a show was, so just to set the scene, we pay for tickets for the Ice House. Bill Burr's headlining. Like the host comes up, he does a little bit. A couple, 3, 4 comedians come up, they do their bit. The host walks back on stage and they're like, hey, we're a little bit worried. Bill Burr is an adamant professional, never misses a show. We can't get him on the phone. We don't know where he's at. He's not showing up. Hey, drinks on us. I'm going to just go into a set. So then the host, God bless his soul, does like a 40-minute set. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, what a champ for like standing up and filling in for, because the audience is mad. People paid more than they normally would. And then right as he's about to get off stage, Bill Burr runs up, and he's the most apologetic I've ever seen a rich person be. He's like, I'm so sorry. My phone was off. I turned it on. I thought the show was tomorrow night. I fucking hauled ass in my Camaro over here at 150 miles an hour. Do you guys mind staying an hour and I'll do my bit? And everybody was raving and ranting. And it's like, cool, now we got an extra hour of comedy. And the lady in the front row gets on her phone. And he's like, man, I really apologize for being late, but like, let's just stay off the phone. He's like, well, the lady just starts getting all indignant. Well, I had to call the babysitter and tell him that we're an hour late. He's like, and he's really apologetic, And then he's just, I'm sorry, we'll make it up to you. Let point to the waiter, let's comp their stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then like 10 minutes later, she gets on the phone. And it was all bets are off. And Bill's like, really, lady? The babysitter didn't get the note the first time that you're going to be an hour late? And she goes, well, you were late. And he launches into this diatribe about how evil women are, and they have to always get the last word. And he's pointing to her husband. He's like, really? You're married to this bitch? And I mean, I'm like, because it wasn't set up. It wasn't like a prop. No. I mean, he was just going off on her. Yeah. And it was uncomfortable and funny and hilarious. And then the crowd didn't know if they should laugh. It's the most uncomfortable I've been in a show. And I was still just like, this is a comedy show, man. Yeah. There's nothing's off limits. If you sit in the front row of a comedy show, they're going to make fun of my fucking pudge and my hot wife. Like, that's just the way it's going to be.
It's interesting, though, because had he not been late and that same interaction had happened, he could have been as viciously brutal as he wanted, and the entire crowd would have been on his side.
Right.
It's one of the... so David Lucas is like one of the best in the world at it right now. But when someone interrupts a show, and I will say that I have noticed in the last year, it's been almost exclusively women who are very white and have very loud opinions about things that aren't them. Like I have a pedophile joke about Subway that I talk about making a new commercial for them. And when I'm talking about the commercial, like I had a lady just yell out, regardless of anything, just veggie lovers. Just the sandwich from Subway. And I said, what? She said, veggie lovers at Subway. Like she thought she was helping or something. And I was just like, I looked through the lights and I was like, ma'am, look at you. You're not ordering a veggie lovers. You are a foot-long cheesesteak twice a day sized gal. You're in my league. Shut the fuck up. And if I had said that to anyone else, or if you make fun of a woman's weight or anything like that, in any context other than she just became the bad guy, you are lambasted and you are fucking crucified for that. But in that moment, 180 people around her are like, yeah, you fat bitch, shut up.
Yeah, pro tip for any audience goer in comedy, you're never helping. Like your heckle, your quip, your one line, you're never helping. So just shut up and laugh. Like I don't understand who goes to a comedy show and is like, you know what? I'm a process intaker for an insurance claims company, but I'm gonna out comedy the comedy guy. Like you're never helping. Just shut your mouth and laugh.
Dude, it's so funny because there's a piece of ego that everybody has that is a little bit funny that you start to notice the longer you've been in comedy. I have people all of the time, literally almost probably every day that I talk to someone that's a layperson, non-comedian, I will have them tell me something funny or recent in their life and then say, you can use this. And it's just like the most egotistical, just insane, ignorant statement. Like, I spend my entire life dedicated to working onto these things I'm going to say on stage, and your stupid fucking time at Vaughn's where the lady took shit out of your cart, that's what you want me to talk about? Your thing that neither of us laughed during you telling me about? The thing that you just ruined my day by talking about how awful your life is? Like, you fucking, I want to kill myself now. And you just said, you can use this? Like, that sentiment is the same reason people heckle. Because they, at the water cooler at work or with their friends at the lake, have a few beers, say some funny stuff. Everybody's laughing. I'm a funny guy. I'm the funny friend in the group. They get to the show. They have a few drinks. I'm saying something. Maybe you are a funny guy and you see where it's going and you think, I'm going to add something. And then you yell something out. And what you forget is this is all we fucking do. So every possible thing that you're going to say, I've thought about someone saying. I've thought about someone saying meaner or worse. And I've thought about what I would say back to them. Also, I, all of the time, work for roast battle stuff. And I spend a lot of time looking at people and thinking of the meanest and funniest things to say about the way that they look. So in that moment, what you've just done is said, my funny thought is so good, I want some of the attention right now because I deserve it. And then what you get back is punched in the fucking mouth with words. And it just never goes. Even the people that are nice about it and try and be welcoming and friendly and aren't adversarial or confrontational, even they are going to embarrass you and you're never going to look good doing it. There's never once where the heckler wins.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Never, ever, ever. You've never seen a comedian go, oh yeah, that was great. Or they get embarrassed and walk off the stage. It's never happened in the history
They
of
might
good
say
comedy.
that, like there's sometimes where people will say stuff and they'll be very funny in the moment. They'll say like, that was great. And then the comedian will still play with it and play off of it. But like if they start to like, so this is the big controversy in the comedy community right now. There's a comedian, Ariel, I can't remember her last name, but she was featuring for Gianmarco Cerezi, who's one of the upcoming funniest people in the world. She's at the show, and during her set, I don't know what the context of it, but she has like a Q&A about something. And these people in the crowd are asking her if she voted for Trump. She says no. She's like, so you voted for Biden then? And she's like, it doesn't really matter. And then they keep saying stuff. And she's like, well, I can tell you voted for Trump because you're still talking after everyone wanted you to shut up.
Genius.
They get mad at her, and then someone throws a beer at her, like a full fucking beer, overhand, hits the wall behind her hard enough. It would have hurt her, like if it had hit her.
Yeah, that guy should be arrested.
So it hits the wall behind her, and then she picks up the beer and chugs the rest of it. And the video goes viral, and she's been doing comedy for a while, so she has the jokes and stuff to stand up to it and is able to, have the composure to chug the beer and all that. So now she's going to get to do a late night set on Kimmel. So like that's like a really cool thing. But like that heckler not only lost, because they I mean, that's a criminal charge. Like they just get arrested for that. They probably won't be because it's comedy and no one gives a shit about us. But now her career is made so much better. So your anger helped her, the person you were angry at. So even if you do end up helping, it's going to be in a way that you hate so much. Yeah. So that's the thing that's crazy.
So I want to talk a little bit about the roast battle, and it's like I find you to be a very intelligent guy, and I'll set the scene. So we were at a business conference, had a 13, 14 business people that we took out to dinner. You were helping me with some assistant stuff. I don't know why. So we all end up at dinner, and thank God we got a private room. So we got a private room. We're at this really fancy steakhouse, and luckily the waitress was this hardcore hardcore lady who kept joking with us about being a lesbian. She had a scarf on her head because she was in the middle of chemotherapy. She was fighting cancer. Sadly, she passed away. She was my favorite my favorite waitress in Vegas. Every time we would go to this restaurant in Vegas before I lived up here, we would request her. We would request this room. And it was an epic setting.
Yeah.
And then somehow, I don't even remember what the first joke was, but the jokes just started flowing and they started coming. And it's like some of the stuff I had heard you make jokes about before, so I'm like, that's a good entry point for this joke that Mike's telling. The table is just dying, and your roasts and your comebacks and your one-liner were epic. And then the word starts to get out to the restaurant that there's a professional comedian at the table, and so a bunch.
Which also at the time I'm not even a professional comedian yet.
Yeah,
I've just done a couple of open mics.
Yeah, you're just warming up to the idea.
Yeah,
and so a bunch of the other waiters and waitresses wanted to come in and hear the jokes, right? And what they didn't understand is that our waitress was a hardcore daughter of a trucker. Yeah. She had heard it all. She could give it back to us. She had the foulest mouth of any waitress I've ever met in my entire life. So that was the setup. And then a couple waitresses came in and heard a joke that they weren't so pleased with.
I remember specifically the one that...
So the manager comes in and she's like, hey, folks, this is a family establishment. We understand you guys are having a good time. We understand that you're in a private room, but there's a certain level of decorum here at Del Frisco's Steakhouse because this is a family establishment. Uh-huh. And then you proceeded with, do you remember the joke?
What I said to her is, God, you'd be so hot if you weren't such a bitch.
Yes. That didn't go over so well. But. And then she said, hey, if we have one more like this, we're going to call the police and kick you out. And meanwhile, my friend Michael Ullman is just like cringing, grabbing his fork because God forbid he doesn't get his free steak. He's going to be so pissed. So they bring the girl in to apologize. And Mike proceeds to say, hey, I'm just a comedian. I'm just telling jokes. I'm actually a really nice guy. I mean, I'm the type of guy that would have sex with you today and pay for the plan B tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I said if I got you pregnant, I'd pay for the abortion.
I'd pay for the abortion. And oh my, I've never seen a woman want to stab another man so badly in my entire life. And of course, everybody at the table just erupts.
Yeah, of course, it's very funny.
It's very funny. I'm pretty certain the police are on the way to kick us out of that restaurant. And it's at that moment I was like, oh, Mike's going to make it, dude. Mike's going to make it in comedy.
Well, and then like, you know, I went afterwards, because that's the other thing too, is that they had walked into the context of it was already okay in that room. And everything
we're like 2 hours into like drinking and telling dirty jokes and the waitress playing back with us.
Dude, like for like a bunch of that, Sainia, our waitress, who's joking about being a lesbian, like I told her, I was like, well, what if I wear like 4 colored condoms so it looks like my dick's made out of, you know, rubber or whatever. She's like, no, I'd be fucking you. You know, and she's like, I promise my strap-on's bigger than your dick. And like just giving it back and like, it's so fucking funny. And I was like, it'd be hard to pull your hair since you lost it all already. And she's like, yeah, but I could fit this bald head up your ass. You know, like,
I mean, this is so, it was so epic all night.
It was so much fun. And then this poor girl walks in and I upset her. And then I upset the manager who's yelling at us. And then I upset the waitress again when I'm supposed to be apologizing. And then I went and apologized and was like, hey, look, that in there doesn't count. I'm sorry. Like, I want you to know I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I wasn't trying to upset you. I wasn't trying to ruin your night. I was trying to make my friends laugh. And I did that. So I'm sorry that you got hit by the shrapnel, but my bad, you know? And I've learned since then, like, there's a joke that I don't do anymore. I saw the Spike Lee movie, Black Klansman. And it talks about, like, what happened at Charlottesville. And I had a joke about Charlottesville. The woman who died, Heather Heyer, it was ironic that a black car hit her and committed the crime. But also the last word she saw is the one word that could have saved her life. Dodge. You know? And it's just such a fucking cruel joke. And it was just mean. And I liked it because it's funny and silly, good wordplay, blah, blah, blah. What a keen observation. I'm so cool. But then watching that movie and seeing how much that emotionally impacted so many people, that the people that will find that funny, they're not going to find it funny for the right reasons. I find it funny because when I wrote that joke, I wasn't aware of the emotional severity of what happened there and how much that had an impact on that community and people like around the country that related to that story. So like I stopped telling that joke because the place where I wrote it from was ignorant of the truth. So if I continue to tell that joke, the people that are going to find it funny are either ignorant of the truth or aware of it and have a bad view of it.
Yeah, or not the type of people you want to be entertaining.
Yeah, I don't want a shitty fan base. I don't like, and that's something that I've started to learn from like some of the people that I really admire, is that you can, like, people talk about selling out, and what it looks like now is when you get mascotted. Because if you have a joke that like one side really, really loves, and then they pass around and share you up. So I had a tweet when COVID was still real and happening. I tweeted the Omicron variant just showed up in LA and already said it's moving to Austin.
I mean, that was pretty fucking hilarious.
It was a good tweet. There was no fat. It was great wording. I'm so happy. I tweet it and it goes viral and it explodes, and Donald Trump Jr. ends up sharing it. And it's like, whoa, that's crazy.
Donald Trump Jr. shared your joke.
Yeah, on Instagram. He shared a screenshot of it on Instagram, and it's wild. That's so crazy that like the former president's son saw a joke I made. So like, you know, like that's insane. But then you start to see like a lot of the people that were sharing that and found it funny and then found it through him and then blew up with it were people that were like, COVID's a fucking hoax. It's the fucking Wuhan flu. It's fucking these Chinese making us sick, and they're just trying to kill our fucking American government. Like, so I was like, oh man, I could very well lean into that path because there's a lot of stuff that I find to be very funny about those viewpoints. And like, I have some racially charged humor that if I took the empathy out would really hit with that group. But I don't want to sacrifice the longevity of my career to be a mascot for somebody that's not an actual fan of what I'm doing, that's using what I'm doing to further their beliefs. Yeah. I want to be an entertainer of people that find like solace and like comfort and like happiness and healing through comedy, because that's what it's always been for me. All of the worst times in my life, I distinctly remember comedy albums that line up with them because I just listened to them over and over again because it brought me comfort and it made me laugh and it made me feel like even in this moment where everything hurts and my life feels like it's over, someone can make me laugh even about stuff like that. Like, you know, that's so I like the Alzheimer's joke is based in the truth of my great aunt passed away from Alzheimer's a little over a year ago. And watching the decline of someone that I grew up with being one of the biggest personalities in the family slowly become like a shell of herself. And to the point where I remember going to visit her, like she was so like dissociated from reality that I'm like fat and dark hair, and she had like a super obsession with Elvis that she would think I was like an Elvis guy. And then would be like making comments like, who's that handsome man in my room to other people. And it was so hard to see because it's a little funny. Like it's a little funny that my great aunt, who's like, it's my grandma's sister, is so like dumb up here that she's looking at me and is like, it's Fat Elvis maybe, you know, like I'd like to watch him die on a toilet. Right. Like what's going on in her head. And so that like, while there was a glimpse of something funny there, and some other stuff that happened, it was a very painful thing to watch. And it was really hard to watch what that did to my family and all the people that grew up with her. And my tribute to her is the joke that I wrote about throat fucking an Alzheimer's patient, their stoma. So like, that's how I handled that, is I took what was funny about that and made it absurd and ridiculous and hyperbolic. And then I made it funny because I know that there are other people that have suffered from that are fucked up like me and are going to laugh really fucking hard at this Alzheimer's joke because they remember the little glimpses of funny during the very hard times there.
Yeah.
So like that's who I'm there for. That's who my jokes are for.
Comedy and jokes help us deal with some of the shittiest situations. Like I remember my my grandmother, I might get emotional telling this story, but my grandmother Midge was like the matriarch of my family. She's the best human being I've ever known. She lived for her grandkids to the point where like she put her and her husband in a bad financial situation because of how many gifts she would buy during Christmas for the grandkids. She was just an amazing human being. I probably slept over at my grandmother's house 3 nights a week, right?
Yeah.
Which means I'm going to die of cancer because we were in a 1-bedroom apartment and everybody's chain smoking from the time I'm like,
oh yeah, this isn't the reason.
No, it's not this.
It's the apartment.
It's the apartment. Born through like 12, 13 years old.
David off, you've been throat goating for an hour.
Yeah, I love how you make fun of my phallic symbol here. Right?
Bro, it is so funny that Republicans that like most of the like not calling you a Republican, but I'm saying like if you go into a cigar bar,
95% conservative.
That is 95% conservative, and they are all putting big black dicks in their mouth. And it's just like the group of people I feel like you hate most are just like, hello, friends. What a great way to socialize. No, you don't inhale. You just kind of suck it. Yeah.
You just let it roll around your mouth like semen, you know?
You got to enjoy the flavor. Even better, get a little wet. Suck it off.
So, oh fuck.
So Midge,
So Midge dies. My grandmother dies, and it turned out we had like an uncle that worked at Forest Lawn, which is the biggest funeral home in Glendale, California. And we're in there, and she wanted to be cremated, so she got cremated. And it's like it just sucks, man. It's like everybody knows the family is about to fall apart. Everybody knows everybody's gonna start fighting over money. Everybody knows that like grandma's gone. Like the tension was just palatable, and not surprisingly, 6 weeks later, the whole family falls apart. I haven't talked to anybody on my dad's side of the family since then. Yeah. But in that moment when everybody's going through this pain and it's hurting, and my Uncle Alfred's like, well, you know, once you cremate somebody, you know, we have some options. We could get this metal urn, or, you know, if finances are a little tight, there's a really nice, effectively a cardboard box that they put in like this gold laminate to make it look pretty. And you know, how would you like the ashes? And my father goes, well, Ziploc bag would be good. And everybody, like, for a moment, it was like so inappropriate, but then everybody started laughing, right? And it eliminated the tension. Him and his brother were able to enjoy their mother's funeral without getting in a fist fight. My grandfather, who my mom hated, like, they were at least able to be civil because the joke cut the tension. And it's like, that's what a wonderful joke can be. Now, if I just told that out of context and I'm like, my dad made fun of her mom when he died and said that the ashes should just come in a Ziploc bag because fuck spending $12 on the cardboard box, you'd be like, dude, your dad's an asshole. Right. But at that moment, him and his joke, that was like savior status. Yeah. And I that's why I can't understand when people get mad at comedy.
Well, not everybody has had that experience because, like, you know what, like, I'm trying to think of a good one. But so here's something for me. The word retarded comes up a lot. And it's one of those words that upsets people. And sometimes I do the voice and I do the faces. And I do it because I think it's funny. And like I use the word retarded because it conveys the message that I'm trying to send with the words that I'm using. However, like I also have a very big place in my heart for retarded people. And like I would never go up to a person with Down syndrome and be like, hey, retard, you know, like I would never do that. So like there's a piece of empathy there. And I had someone come up to me, you know, after a show and say, hey, you know, like I have a brother with Down syndrome, and it just really hurt me to hear you use the word retarded so much because I loved your comedy and I loved your jokes and I thought you were brilliant. And then it just sucked to hear that you weren't better than using that word. And that's something where it's like, man, that fucking sucks. Like, that sucks to hear because that's not what I'm trying to do with that word. And I didn't want to hurt anybody with that. But at the same time, I also have another friend who has two siblings with Down syndrome. And then I have a friend who had a Down syndrome bully, like, growing up. And, like, I've heard from them that, like, they don't give a shit. It doesn't bother them. It doesn't affect them. And that they get that I'm not being injurious or mean because they've had people that are actually being mean. So like the words aren't hurtful anymore. It's kind of one of those things that I found like black people make a much better crowd for an audience for comedy because they don't get offended by words because they have actual problems. Yeah. You know, like they might get shot by a cop for a speeding violation. Like me saying, stop being, you know, gay isn't going to bother a gay black guy because he's like, dude, I've had, like, real problems. You know, like, right. But white women who've never had a problem, they're a terrible audience member because words hurt them. They haven't experienced that. But that's the same thing as there are people who just haven't experienced yet a moment where a joke made it better. Because there are times where, like, a joke will make things better, but then there's also moments where I've made an irreverent joke and it didn't hit with everybody. It made someone else's experience even worse. Amazing moment not too long ago. I was at a comedy show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the Harrisburg Comedy Zone. I'm featuring for my buddy Galen Nash, who's headlining. I'm doing 30. He's doing 45. We're on the late show on Friday, I believe. So there's 80, 90 people there, and spread out across the stage. And there's a lady stage right, probably 4 or 5 rows back, who had been kind of chatty during my set. But as a feature, I'm not going to go into the crowd and start any kind of crowd work or build anything up, because there's a chance that I burn the room and upset people and get angry. And then the headliner has to do more work to fix that room.
Yeah, because there's an ebb and flow in the room. Like your job is to be good, but also make the headliner, like, you're there to pump up the audience. You're the opening band for Guns N' Roses.
Exactly. Like, the host is the fluffer, who's there to, like, get you ready for comedy and, like, to let you know the context of it and show you how jokes work and get you laughing and get you excited and in the mood and to you be agreeable and happy. And then the feature is there to start jerking you and get you ready, and then the closer's there to make you nut. So I'm not going to do something that could make you soft, right? That's not what I'm going to do during my feature. So I'm kind of ignoring her, and then I'm also really big energetically, and I have a big stage presence. So I can walk over closer to her, and then all the energy goes there, and then she is more self-conscious and quiet. And so, like, I'm doing that, and then Galen gets up to headline, and maybe 15, 20 minutes into his set, this lady gets a phone call, and her phone rings, which, who has a ringtone anymore, but it rings, and he's like, what kind of lullaby-ass shit ringtone is that? Because it's like Brahms' lullaby as her fucking ringtone. And she answers it, and he's like, and you're going to fucking answer? God, like, I hope that lullaby was like someone dying, you know? Turns out it was.
Oh.
She was getting a call that her mom had just died. And so she answers the call, and she's like, fuck you, someone did die. And so her and her husband are walking out, and he's like, yo, you know I'm not God. I didn't kill her, right?
No.
And the lady goes, well, you're not funny either. And walks out. And then Galen, has the presence of mind to be like, yo, how wild is it that lullaby literally was saying her mom's asleep forever? And it brings the room back. Everybody fucking laughs. And all of the people that are there are like, what a genius comeback. What a funny thing. What a crazy thing to just experience. Holy shit, was that real? But for that lady, she was so upset. And like, her memory of her mom dying is going to be this fucking punk ass 25-year-old roasting her ass as she leaves a comedy show.
Right.
That means that probably the next time that there's like a bad situation and someone tries to make a joke, she's going to go nuclear.
Right. So
in situations like that, like, sometimes people have scars and sometimes people have problems from their past where you bring that up. There might be someone at my show, and then I start talking about a pedophile joke, and they got molested, and the person that molested them just posted some great successful thing about them on Facebook, and it just reopened their trauma, and they went to a comedy show to try and feel better. And then I start minimalizing, pedophilia by saying that, what Jared did was Subway's fault. When he was fat, he wasn't doing it, but then they gave him these sandwiches, and they used his new hot body to fuck all these kids. And then they get mad about that, and they're like, that's not okay. I was like, hey, you yelling at me doesn't unfuck those kids. Right. Like, I'm ready for it. I'm there for comedy, and they came to comedy for, like, what I was talking about, like the healing and that catharsis and to have some relief from it. But they weren't expecting the comedy to hit a button so close to home. So, like, that's the other thing where
But you can't control that.
No.
You don't know what the experiences of the people in the audience.
So that's what I'm saying is, like, I can't worry about that when I'm writing jokes, because then nothing I do will ever be okay, because you never know the battle that anyone's facing. Everyone could be having a bad day. So what I have to write is the things that I think are funny. Right. And then I have to go up there and make them as funny as possible.
Right.
So, like...
And by the way, I think that's why the people that I would consider the most funny in the game right now, Chappelle, Bill Burr, like the big name people, because I don't go to a ton of small comedy shows, like, they're equal opportunity insulters, like Bill Burr's most recent thing at Red Rock, where he tells his stance on abortion is, like, to me, brilliant, because he sides with the pro-choice crowd, and then he immediately makes fun of them at their expense for the pro-life crowd, and it's like, it's brilliant, right? And it's like, that's what I think I like so much, because I have been to some comedy shows where you're like, oh, this guy is actually anti-insert whatever group you want, and you're like, you can just feel it. These jokes are in anger, and they're coming from, like, kind of a rotten place.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones that are really good, or maybe it's like you said, you can just feel somebody being jolly because they're a little overweight and they're fun and they're funny. Like it has to roll off your back or comedy doesn't exist. And I think if comedy doesn't exist, we're in a way worse place in the world.
Well, you need to have a pressure valve. Like, like that's the thing is, right now, that there's just been like tragedy after tragedy. There's fucking school shootings every day, and there's fucking terrorist attacks all over the world, and like a lot of countries don't even have food and shit, and like fucking Flint, Michigan's still fucked for water somehow.
Right. Yeah, we literally have a county in the United States where you can't drink
stole
water.
a shit ton of money to give to children's softball.
Isn't that like the craziest story?
Like it's just like every day there's something terrible happening. The fucking Angela Lansbury died. There's
that doesn't bother me in the least, by the way.
She was the teapot in Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, I know.
She was so nice.
One of the things I'll never forget is my mom watching that horrible show, Murder, She Wrote. And like, I think that show was on either at the time I was supposed to go to bed, so I was angry, or maybe that was on the same time slot as Quantum Leap, and I wanted to watch Quantum Leap because that's like one of my favorite shows from my childhood. And I just remember, I think it was the first time I ever used the word bitch in front of my mom and dad, and I got it for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Mom, like, this is a little town, right? Like, if somebody's dying every week, wouldn't that dumb bitch just leave the town? And my mom was so offended because she loved Angela Lansbury and she loved that show, Murder, She Wrote. Yeah. But, like, the murder rate there was like 10%. There was somebody getting murdered every weekend, the shitty little Covington Cove or whatever the name of the town was. And ever since then, I hated Angela Lansbury. And then when I heard that she was a bitch to work with on Beauty and the Beast, I was like, see, I knew she was just a horrible human being. That rules. So I hate Angela Lansbury.
But I'm agreed. I don't give a shit about her either. I don't care what anybody does. It's fucking the last person. I get sad when comedians I know die, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And friends and shit. But like in terms of celebrities dying, it's like, okay.
There's like 3 celebrities that hit me.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a guess?
Eddie Van Halen?
No.
No.
Fuck. So Paul Walker, awkwardly, because like I grew up. I grew up loving the Fast and the Furious movies, and the guy who was driving the car that he died in was having an affair with a girl that I know. So like I was sad for Paul Walker.
Okay.
Ronald Reagan, because I like grew up. I grew up my dad's hero being Ronald Reagan, and the funeral was so sad. And when like Nancy Reagan put her head on the casket, I was like next to my buddy crying.
Yeah.
And Kobe Bryant. Like when Chris told me, I remember Chris and I were working at our house on a Saturday or Sunday. He died on the weekend, and I came out of the bathroom and Chris was like, "Yeah, Kobe Bryant died." I'm like, "Bro, don't even fucking joke about that shit. The dude's been like my hero for fucking 20 years." He's like, "No, really, TMZ. Like they never get this shit wrong. He died." And I'm like, "Shut the fuck up." And even like a year later, 2 years later, I was like, they're going to find him in the woods at Topanga Canyon or Calabasas, wherever the helicopter crashed, because, like, he's Kobe Bryant. He's a superhero. He jumps out of stuff. That hit me pretty hard.
Yeah.
So those are my 3 celebrities, and I'm like, it's a bummer.
Dude, the day Kobe died, so Cole broke the news in the group chat on Telegram and was like, I think Kobe Bryant just died. But it was so soon that if you Googled Kobe Bryant dead, nothing showed up. You Google helicopter crash LA, and some stuff had just confirmed that there was a helicopter crash, but no one was willing to say it. And then TMZ was the first one to leak it. And so I am on the way to a comedy workshop by this woman, Judy Carter. She wrote a book called The Comedy Bible. Now, one thing in comedy, and it's probably not as universal as a lot of the other truths in comedy, but those who can't teach. Like that's a big thing. So in the comedy world, you might be able to learn some of the shit about it, but you're not selling fucking comedy classes unless you like suck shit at comedy. You can't sell tickets. So she'd written this comedy Bible, and it's a lot of like hobbyists' introduction to comedy, but she holds like workshops where she can teach you some stuff. And while I might shit on it and say all of that, I'm still open to learning. And there might be something I can glean because this person's been doing it for so long that there's at least going to be something that she's figured out that could maybe
It's going to be
help.
a couple of nuggets.
There's something. And it's like fucking $15. I get a signed book. If she dies, I can sell it for something, whatever. So I'm on my way to that. It's in Burbank at Flappers. I'm riding with my buddy Joshua Wad, who's a comedian who's from LA and is a huge Kobe fan. Has a painting of Kobe on his wall that his fiance got him. Like, huge diehard Kobe fan and one of my closest friends in LA that I've met since I moved there. So I find that out and I'm like, dude, Kobe just died. And he's like, shut the fuck up. And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, no fucking way. I can't even think about that. And I'm like, damn. My first thing that I do with the information is I tweet, man, that helicopter really raped Kobe.
Oh, too soon.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. Tony Hinchcliffe tweeted, I can't believe it. Kobe passed. And then Ari Shaffir famously goes on a rant and says, fuck Kobe, I'm glad he's dead. Fuck LA, you soulless pieces of shit. Soul that you pretend to be these woke fucking losers, and then you welcome back a rapist just because he can bring you some championship rings. He changed his number and suddenly it's okay, and fuck the Me Too movement. You hypocritical pieces of shit. I'm glad he died. Whoa. So he says all that. To understand the context of Ari has a famous relationship of hating the Lakers because anytime there's a Lakers game in LA, the comedy shows suck because everybody goes to the fucking Lakers game. So he has hated the Lakers forever. He has an album where he, like, in the middle of recording his album, asked someone to check the score of the Lakers game to make sure they're losing. And he's like, yeah, good, fuck the Lakers. That's him. But he does all of that. He gets dropped from his management agency. He's getting death threats out the wazoo. He gets his Netflix special canceled. Like, it was a big fucking to-do. Tony deletes his tweet. I delete my tweet, but the damage is already done. I ended up getting death threats about this. Cole had to come to the show with a gun to make sure I was okay and wasn't going to get shot.
Yeah, people don't understand in LA how beloved Kobe Bryant was. Like, if you grew up in LA and, like, the timing was such that Kobe and I were the same age. So, like, as I'm getting out of the Army, he's just getting into the NBA. He'd been in the NBA for, like, a year or two. Mm-hmm. And then I'm basically, like, an LA native as he's just printing championships. Yeah. And it's, other than the Jordan era with the Bulls, like, you'll probably, Jordan with the Bulls, Kobe and Shaq, Kobe and Gasol with the Lakers, Tom Brady with the Patriots. Like, you're just a spoiled brat as a fan.
Yeah.
And
the
you're
Splash
never,
Brothers right now, the Warriors.
Yeah, you're never going to get to see that again. And it probably not in my lifetime for a team that I root for because the Steelers suck. UCLA's doing pretty good this year. The Lakers kind of suck again. Dodgers look good, but they'll shit the bed in the playoffs as they always do. But it's like, when you said I'm getting death threats, I'm like, yeah, totally. And you probably deserve them.
What? No, 100%. So that was the thing too, though, is that we're at this workshop, and then there's a lady, the Judy Carter lady who's running this workshop. She is teaching how to work out a premise where you can do different punchlines to it. And so she's saying, like, I want everybody to think of an example of something funny that would survive like a nuclear holocaust. And I said, Kobe's helicopter. and it was just a thing. And I remember Josh looked over at me, and I was like, dude, I can't sit through this. Is a fucking nightmare. I'm not waiting for any more nuggets. This is fucking dog shit. And I walked out of the class, and in that area where Flappers is in Burbank, there's all that fucking outdoor mall. There are no less than 20 grown men crying, like sobbing, like holding strangers. Like, it is, I mean, it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And the whole time, all I'm thinking is, in high school, my dad, when he was doing really well, got us courtside seats to see the Mavericks play the Lakers. It's Dirk Nowitzki versus Kobe. Fucking what an iconic game. And it's down in the fourth quarter, and Kobe's shooting free throws. And I yell, Kobe, no means no. And Kobe Bryant looks me in the eye, looks back, and sinks the free throw. And it was just like, oh, shit.
I know.
Fucking what? But that's my only interaction with Kobe ever, and the only one I'll ever have was just that. And so, I remember that, but I remember after I had made those jokes and I made the tweet and stuff, my other buddy Frank Ulloa and Josh both were, like, really genuinely upset with me. And I was like, hey, guys, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was too soon for you guys. I didn't realize how impactful he was in your life. And both of them were like, yeah, man, when you were saying all that shit, I was like, I like Kobe more than I like Mike. Right. And it was just like, damn, it's wild.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that the way that people worship stuff. The last celebrity that I cried about, I think the only time I ever cried about a celebrity dying was Brittany Murphy.
Yeah, that was tough.
It was because it was the first person I remember jerking off to.
Oh, well, that's
and so
fair.
I was like, oh no, my first love,
Heather Locklear.
Yeah. She's still alive, right?
Yeah, still
Thank
alive.
God.
Still doesn't look so bad.
No.
Yeah. I remember telling a realtor one time, she was like, she was this old lady, Ann Fitzgibbons. I love her to death. She's like a hardcore, raspy, you know, probably smoked a pack a day in her youth, and she would cuss like a sailor when we were alone. You know, very professional when she was in front of her people, but she was calling me, and she was just ragging me about this client. And in context, her and I had this relationship where I could say this kind of stuff. I would never say this to some female realtor that I was just working with for the first time. And she's like, well, Scott, you know, I saw that my client could get this and you should be doing that. And I got this. Da, 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 da. And I was like, Ann, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to grow up to bang Heather Locklear. And sometimes dreams just don't come true. And she laughed so hysterically on the phone for like 5 minutes. And then she's like, I cannot believe you had the balls to tell me that. But in fairness, I did tell you about the first person I slept with in 1957. So I think we're on that footing. And she's like, I'll leave you alone now. I just needed to vent. And I'm like, I love you, Ann.
Yeah.
You're the best. You're the best.
But that's what to the point I was making. That's why we need comedy in this world, and that's why it can't ever go away. And I don't think it ever will.
Right.
And
there's some people trying hard, though.
But they're all fucking losers, you know?
I agree.
Like there will always be the fucking people that try and have morning raves and try and do fucking yoga parties, and they're losers. And that's fine. Be a loser. Go find your tribe and be losers where I don't have to look at you. But like you guys are boring, and that's why you don't get invited to the cool parties. And the cool parties are never going to stop. Prohibition created the mafia. When you try and make something not possible, you just push. Dude, one of the most fun shows I've ever done, and I've done some really fucking cool shows, and I've done some really cool venues and some really iconic and historic places, and like I've had some really epic memories. But one of my like top 5 for sure is during the pandemic, when everything is fucked in LA in the middle of 2020 in Downey, California, in a speakeasy. I drove to this fucking strip mall parking lot where all of the fucking stuff on every single building looks like hieroglyphics. I don't know what Mandarin or what, but it was all some kind of Asian letters. We walked through a nail salon that is shut down, but the lights are on. We walked through a back alley. We walked through a kitchen, and then we come out to a bar with 100 people at it. And it's a speakeasy. Cole came. But it's a speakeasy bar, and they're serving drinks, and there's no masks, and there's a microphone, and there's people all in close, and the fucking doors are locked, and the lights are all blacked out on the outside, and you can't tell what's going on, and you could say anything and do anything, and it was one of the most fun times I've had on stage, and it felt dangerous and secretive and spicy. And if you try and kill comedy, you're just going to make more rooms like that. You can't stop a bunch of fucking addicts from getting their heroin. Like, we're just going to make fentanyl.
Right.
You know? So, like, that's the thing. All these people that are trying to stop comedy, they're creating whole new waves of comedians. You know, there are people who are just trying, like, and that's the thing, too, is that there's all these, that you have to take into account that all it takes to be a comedian is just say you're a comedian.
Right.
You don't even have to do fucking comedy. You can just say you're a comedian. You can just go on the internet and be like, I'm a comedian. These are jokes. Like, you can just do that, and you can do it anywhere. So, because it has, like, the literal lowest barrier to entry possible, the variance in talent and skill level is huge. And if you just understand that some people suck shit at it, and the equivalent of me being able to throw a 20-yard spiral and land it, you know, right in the bread box for a receiver, and being able to just kind of shot put the ball a few yards is the difference between a comedian and a comedian a lot of times in terms of jokes. So when you are looking at these people that are on Netflix, they're NFL quarterbacks. And then you can go to an open mic and you can see someone throwing a football for the very first time. And unlike that, you need someone to throw the football to, and there's no one out there that can tell you how to throw a football, because you have to figure out how to throw a football the way that you throw it, or it won't matter, because you can't throw it like anybody else, or you're cheating. So, like, that's the other thing, like, I think people have to take into account is sometimes they're like, we should cancel comedy, and it's like, well, shitty comedy sucks and shouldn't exist. The people that are just getting up there and being like, it'd be funny as if we just raped a bunch of ladies. They talk too much. Huh? Like that. You see what they're trying to get to, and there's something in there where they're like, maybe if I say something edgy and crazy, it'll be funny, but they don't get the essence of what comedy is.
Right.
So like,
I have seen that where people try to be like shock jocks, and I'm like, yeah, I get what you were trying to do there, but Howard Stern is Howard Stern because there was nuance, and he was being shocking about stuff that was in the
and
pub.
he talks like this, and you don't expect this fucking
Totally.
soft-spoken Jew to be like, so you ever licked out your mom?
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's something to it where it's not just him trying to be crude 24/7, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's lost on a lot of new comedians because, man, I saw you at some of these open mics where you were in LA, and I was like, whew, that was painful. I'm really glad the beers were only $4.
Yeah.
Because if not, I'd be really upset with Mike right now.
Dude, there's and I tell a lot of people, don't invite your friends to open mics because they'll get a bad view of comedy. But like, there's people that come and you see all that, and you the context of every situation is what makes it important. Like in the context of this podcast, I've made a bunch of like retard and Jew and lady jokes and said some offensive stuff, but this is also, I'm a comedian on a podcast. This is a closer approximation to who I am in real life and who I am off of the microphone when I'm comfortable and we have a rapport. So it's something where if you know me, and I know you very well, and we've got a bunch of history together. So I can say all these things to you because you know where my intentions lie and know who I am,
right,
and know that those aren't representative of my true thoughts. Those are something I'm saying in the moment for entertainment value on the podcast and whatnot. And
I know you have a good heart, man, like which I think most comedians do, most good ones at least.
So that's the context of this. However, if you don't know me, some of your viewers don't know me at all and don't know anything about me and have never heard of me or anything like that, and so they'll see that for the first time, and then they have to make up that decision, and they don't have all of the history and context, so some of the stuff might come out wrong. But that's where you have to start, and that's where like artistic leniency is important, and that's where we need to be a little more forgiving with people, because that's how you get really great people, is by letting them fail. Yeah. And you can come on here and say, hey, that joke wasn't funny. That feedback I'm always welcome to. If someone doesn't like a joke that I have and they're like, hey, that wasn't fucking funny, tell me that. I need to know that, because if you hated a joke and thought, like, didn't even see where I was going and it didn't make any sense, then that's something I need to work on, because that's not, I offended you. That's not, you're in your feels and your own personal shit. That's what I did is not good enough. And my job, it wasn't done here today. So like, if someone comes on the podcast and like, hey, that wasn't funny, I didn't like that, that's not a very good joke, then that's something I got to look at. And I got to think back and I got to watch through that tape and be like, okay, next time I'm in a podcast and I'm trying to achieve that same effect, the example I'll use is this. So like you got to self-correct, but people coming on there and say, fucking cancel that guy, never have him on any podcast, fuck him. People reaching out and saying, oh, you sponsored this guy's podcast, you should drop him as a sponsor because of this thing that he said.
Right.
Like the fucking rules of people that are like, you can't say this thing, even if you were doing it in an attempt to be funny, you can't say this because it was too fucked up. Like that, when it starts to have financial consequences, that's the stuff I'm not cool with.
Right.
And I
Me neither.
And I don't think it should happen. So that's why I say like the free market like doesn't fix that stuff, because I mean, Ari Shaffir, if it was a free market, like it should have just been about how funny he was and if you could still move tickets. And he would have still moved tickets to all of those Netflix specials, and not a single person that was a fan of Ari Shaffir saw that and was like, I don't like Ari anymore. I mean, maybe some fucking diehard Lakers fans, but they were bigger Lakers fans than they were Ari fans.
Right.
So like nobody that was like an Ari fan and is like, the Kevin Kelly Technium 1,000 True Fans, none of those 1,000 True Fans that are the people that sustain his ability to have a career as a comedian saw that and were like, fuck that guy, he doesn't deserve that. However, to the potential newer people and from a risk management assessment, like of the temperature of America, Aqua, his talent agent, was like, nope, he's fucking done. Netflix, nope, we're not fucking putting that out.
Which is crazy to me, because if you think of like one of the most beloved people in Hollywood, my mind would immediately go to Keanu Reeves. Mm-hmm. Keanu Reeves does movies where he kills 75 people gruesomely in one movie. Yeah. But nobody's like, you know what? Keanu Reeves is a piece of shit. We should cancel him. We should cancel his sponsors. We should never watch a movie made by Paramount again because they're killing Asian people. It's like, no, people understand there's like this, what do you call it? Suspension of disbelief. Is that right? Yeah. Suspension of disbelief, where it's like, no, this is a movie. We're in it for the fun and the action and the gunplay, and it's like crazy. And we know that never happened. We know Keanu Reeves is not out there just like going to downtown LA trying to murder 50 Asians with a, with a 1911. But for some reason, people can easily make that leap in movies and things of that nature. But in comedy, people just get all.
Well, that's because
some people get bent out of shape.
Well, that's because in comedy, there's also an expectations of some essence of truth to it, and there's also the nuance of all the different styles of jokes. Like I was talking about, I mentioned him earlier, Anthony Jeselnik. I just rewatched his special Thoughts and Prayers from 2015. He has a joke where he says, "Having a good day. I saw a baby in a hot car. Tried to throw." Rock through the window. Window was down. So that baby's really not having a good day, and so like you hear all of that, and the reason that it's funny is because if it were to happen, it would be so fucking insane that all of that happened, and so then you could suspend the disbelief that anyone would be that terrible of a human because it's I think the literary term is ghoulish overkill. It's such a ridiculous and macabre representation of a reality that you can realize that this person would be arrested and away from society if they were truly doing these things. However, in the end of that same special, he tells the story of when he got canceled for a bit that he did on his TV show on Comedy Central and how he couldn't, he was standing behind the tweet and would never bend the knee to them saying you have to delete this tweet or we'll cancel your show because he didn't care about him. But then he would lose all of the people in the crew that work on the show and all of those people that were a part of that. He couldn't take that away from them. He couldn't look at his camera guy and be like, "Sorry, you can't feed your family. I had this really sweet tweet." Like he just couldn't bring himself to do that. So there's that truth in the middle of this comedy show where you've already suspended disbelief and you understand that this character he's playing on stage is so crazy and insane that he couldn't be that bad. But then he comes back and tells you the story, the truth, and then he ends it by saying, "And now, should have kept the tweet. Fuck those guys. They fucking suck," And then he comes back and it's like, so now that's not true. But then that other part was. This other part, he presents it, and that is very much true. But he presented everything as true.
Right.
And then he brings a transition point about 25 minutes into the set where he says, "Now, nothing I said before this was true, but what I'm about to say is very true." And then he says that. But he could have done that at any point before saying that other stuff, and then it would have made the joke funnier. But then he saved it for when it was actually true, to have the juxtaposition of then saying the not true thing of "fuck those guys, I hate them" or whatever. But so that's where a person that doesn't have like the intellectual capacity to understand nuance is going to misinterpret comedy because they're going to see that he said some of this is true, and then they're going to apply that outwardly, and they're going to say, well, what skeletons does Jeselnik have in the closet? What is he hiding? Where is the source for this humor? If all of this is based in truth, then where is this truth coming from? And what they don't understand is that his truth is that he finds this to be funny. His truth is also a piece of the actual truth. And by sharing a piece of the truth, it creates a sterner line between what the other things were.
So I want to pull on that thread, and we're coming up on 2 hours. I know you got to get out of here for a comedy show. What's your truth, man? Like, why the fuck are you doing this?
I can tell you, growing up, I was always very shy, and I didn't want to talk to people. And I think it was, one, I was scared of rejection, and two, my parents got divorced when I was very young, when I was 2, and then immediately my dad went to dealing with an alcohol problem, and so he was dealing with that and struggling to get sober. And my mom is devastated by the divorce, and then she moves in with my grandma, and my grandma's dealing with some personal struggles. So the 2 women in my life who I'm spending a primary amount of my time with are emotionally consumed by their own trauma in their life. My mom becomes so sick, she gets pneumonia, and so it's not things that are within her control. But, these are like my formative need for nurture years, and there's chaos in my life. And what I remember, like some of my mom's stories of me growing up was trying to make her laugh and smile during these very scary and sad situations. And then because my parents are divorced and, my dad's working really hard, my mom's working really hard, they're 2 single parents trying to be able to afford this kid. And they're just constantly at work. So now I got to be big to get attention, and I'm not getting it at home. So I got to get it at school. I become a class clown, because that's a great way to get attention. Is people will notice me, but then I'm getting in trouble, and I'm smart, and so they're like, he's gifted, he has potential, but he's a fucking idiot when he talks too much. So there's all of the stuff of people telling me, you have so much potential, but you can't keep your fucking mouth shut, and you're a problem, and what you're doing is not okay. And then also, like, I feel like I need to do something to deserve love and attention outside of that. So that manifests through me becoming both a bully and bullied and being like a real asshole and just overcorrecting for all of my insecurities as a teenager and adolescent and even into my early 20s. And then I start to go through some like emotional intelligence training and I learn empathy for the first time. And then I start to try and find my purpose in the world. And I found that I loved helping people, but that in the world of like philanthropy and charity and nonprofits, there's one, like a lot of business dealings, and two, there's a lot of people that don't have a heart for irreverence. There are some people who, like I said before, people that have been through actual hardship don't ever seem to have real problems with it. But there are some people that have had tangential hardship where they didn't have the cancer, but their father did, and watching him deteriorate really hurt. And so that was their hardship. And so now hearing jokes about cancer dad makes them immediately sad and upset. So in any situation where I might make a joke that would be funny to cancer dad, she's hurt. So like, and that was a thing I kept running into is like, I still like to party. You know, I like to have fun. Like I like staying up till 4 or 5 a.m. doing crazy shit with my friends and having funny talks. So I found like smaller and smaller tribes that I involved, like really identified with until I would get so small in the circle that it was just me again. And every time it just kept being me again. And then when I found comedy, and the first open mic that I went to wasn't great, but then when I started really doing it and meeting the comedians and like working on it and talking to people, I found unconditional acceptance, which was something I had found in like a 12-step program before and thought that I belonged there because of the way they accepted me. But then I didn't align values with them. Then I found people that had the same values. They wanted to be funny. They wanted to see what they could do to make people laugh. And then I found people that had freedom to fail and giving me space to grow. So there was a lenience. So I could commit a social faux pas. I could, not text someone back or not show up to a thing I was supposed to be at. Or I could, I could go over the line and not be funny that night. I could bomb terribly. But all of that was still okay because I had acceptance because what I was doing was the same thing they were doing. And we both agreed that what we were trying to do was being funny. And then lastly, like you didn't always have to do that, but we knew that that was what we were in pursuit of. And I've met the most fascinating and interesting and unique people. And like, some people meet me and they're like, you've lived a bunch of lives and you have an interesting story. And I do. I have a bunch of interesting stuff that happens to me, but I'm just one of 30,000 people that are just as interesting and fascinating, if not more so. And so what I've found is that for me, the reason I do it is I have a community that I love. I have a relentless passion for what I'm doing. And the difficult parts of the job are so much worth the benefit of the job that even the only hope of financial compensation is enough to continue doing the dirty work. So I'm in it because there's, one, nothing else that's ever lit me up inside like this. And two, because I found that I have a gift. The thing that when I was young was getting me in trouble is now the thing that is making my life possible. And that's looking at the situation, finding what's funny about it, and sharing that with the people around me. So that's why I do it.
It's awesome, man. That's going to be a clip for sure. Like that's gonna be a 3-minute closer right there.
Yeah.
Man, finding deep conversation with Mike Eaton.
This always fucking happens, dude. I talk with people and they're like, this is about to be crazy shit. We're about to talk about drugs and sex and party. And then it's like, life.
Right? Yes. Let me tell you the secret to life by Mike Eaton. All right. Going into 2023, what's my favorite couple closing questions? Obviously, we know your favorite band is Third Eye Blind, which is weird. But going into 2023, end of 2022, what's in focus for you? What are you looking forward to? Like, what's the next big thing for Mike?
First, I want to say, if you are hating on Third Eye Blind and you're out there listening to this and you're like, I don't get it, go listen to the song by them, Non-Dairy Creamer. It's incredible.
I know what you're talking about.
Great song. Or Cop versus Phone Girl. Both great songs. Brilliant. Things I'm looking forward to and things I'm building on, one of the really cool parts of comedy is that I could never imagine how cool things are going to get because there's no way of knowing when you're going to pop off. One of my good friends, Casey Shornima, who's a very funny comic who moved from Nashville to Austin, has been crushing it in Austin, got JFL New Faces, which is a huge deal, and then she crushed it so hard there that she's now writing on Saturday Night Live and looking for apartments in New York. And 3 months ago, she was just super excited about JFL. So like the cool part is that the sky's the limit in terms of, like Grant Cardone 10X or whatever his bullshit is. That guy's a Scientologist, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
But so like what I really want to accomplish by the end of 2023 is to be able to do an hour on stage, regardless of capacity. So right now I can do an hour if I have a full comedy club of people that are warmed up and excited. However, that 35-minute set that I was looking at earlier, I had the option of doing up to 45 minutes there, but I was in an outdoor venue and I had about 60 people, and there were 20 of them in front of me and then a small driveway, and then 40 of them starting about 35 feet from me, and then in like a triangle shape. And it was kind of cold outside, and there were cars kind of driving through that driveway every now and then, and there wasn't super great speaker system. So when you start to take out some of the Jenga blocks of what you need to have a very sturdy comedy set, I didn't have what it takes to keep that crowd at the level that I wanted them for another 10 minutes. I had already exhausted the material that I thought made the cut for what was good enough to do at that point in time, and I didn't have any more that was going to be at that level. So I got to keep building material. Like that Harriet Tubman thing, that's going to turn into something. The fucking handicapped women thing is going to turn into something. They might end up being related, who knows? And so I have that. I have, a few other jokes that I need to retire because they're getting to be based on references that are a little too old. So, I want to get to a place where I have an hour by the end of next year. I would like to have accomplished some more traveling. This year I did the most traveling I've ever done. Got to do comedy in the most new states that I've added. But I still haven't made it to some of the big markets. I haven't done Chicago. I only had 2 days in New York City. I haven't really done anything in San Francisco. And then there's also like a bunch of the Midwest. Acme Comedy Club in Minneapolis, Minnesota is known by comics to be one of the best places in the world to perform. So is Comedy on State in Madison, Wisconsin. So by the end of the year, I'd like to have at least one of those places where I've gotten to host or feature for somebody. I want to get my podcast to a place where it's like financially good.
Shout out to the podcast. What is it?
It's highly social. Highly social. It's me getting high on Delta 8 or CBD and getting social with comics and other. I had a musician on. I had a couple of really badass magicians on. This past week, I had a guy named Uncle Laser, who was like a social media sensation and then has started doing stand-up. And already 3 months in, he's already like done shows with Rogan and shit. So he's a murderer.
Killing it.
Yeah, he's insanely good. So I want to get that to a place. I just started building my YouTube. And so now I'm like figuring out all the social media of that stuff. And so 2023, I really want to be a year. My pillars are stand-up, podcast. And so I want to keep growing both of those to a place where I can have the podcast start funding more of my stand-up stuff and start to transition more out of my day job so that I can really dig in on this. Because this is one of those things that I was talking with a buddy of mine recently is like you have Y Combinator for startups where you have these people and you see, like Uber in its infancy, there are these guys that needed coding help and some direction and some guidance on how they could become a unicorn. And so they put them in this house with a bunch of other fucking dope-ass people. They put a bunch of money and investment, and they said, don't worry about any of the other problems. Focus on this. And then what it became was fucking incredible. So those kind of houses like that are really powerful. Steve Hofstetter, who you've seen like Heckler, or Comedian Destroys Heckler. Yeah. It's that redheaded guy with the glasses.
Yep.
He started something very similar to that in Pittsburgh. But it's one of those things where if I had somebody that was like, hey, for... like a return on investment over a 10-year period, I'll invest, $25,000 into your career. That would be like, okay, so I already have like a studio taken care of, so now I pay for really good clips and social media. I would pay for a bunch of flights and hotels and then book a bunch of shit out. And then I would be able to focus more on all of the other writing stuff that I need to do because now I'm not running around for day job. I'm not exhausted. I'm not driving a bunch of hours. There's a bunch of the stuff that is... necessary evils right now that would be removed. I think it would be very interesting to see if that would allow me to put my foot on the gas more or if I would take it off. So it's a fun thing to toy around with, thinking about. But it's also like whenever I pull up next to a guy in a Lamborghini, I think like, what if he just gave me his car? It's just like, what if he was just like, oh, dude, that Prius is sick, like it's never gonna happen. But it's like, what if, So the 2023 stuff is like, what if somebody starts like that in Austin? There's a club my friends are opening, Sunset Strip, that's gonna open in February, where they got one of the coolest and most historic venues in Austin. And like, what if I get a residency there where I get paid up front for something? Like, what if like I start producing a show there and it starts selling well, and then I have an extra $2,000 a month in ticket sales that I'm able to put towards stuff. There's no way of knowing what that would look like. So I just want to focus on getting as good as I can at podcasting and just keeping on the same track that I am with comedy, where I'm doing as much as possible every single day.
Love it, man. Yeah. And last question, favorite movie and why?
Ooh, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Because I think
I've admitted to you that I've never seen it.
I know,
and I'm a
crazy.
movie junkie, and for some reason I've never seen it.
So the thing about it that I love is if you watch it to be a funny, cool, crazy, quirky drug movie, it's that. If you watch it as a historical representation of the greatest period in America and when we actually peaked, it's also that. There's a line in the movie, there's a couple, that are really crazy that people quote all the time. It's impossible to walk in this muck. I can't get any footings. These goddamn golf shoes. He's on 4 or 5 drops of acid trying to check into the hotel. And that's one of the ones that people also think of. But there's also another one where he talks about there was a moment where the hippies really felt like they were winning and they had achieved something because they had influenced the government and there was something we could do. And then there was some time, and I think he's referencing Kent State, but around there where we hit a high water mark. And suddenly all of that goodwill and intention and that feeling of like, maybe we're finally doing something, and the love. And when I say hippie, there's a lot of connotation to that, but when you just think about like what it was as a movement of people that were like pro like labor union, and they're like wanting to like a lot of these like socialistic, empathetic kind of policies of helping the most people and living wages and all of that shit. And if you take out the political chargeness of it and just look at it as like people wanting to do like a humanitarian thing, and even if you ignore, history about communism, socialism, how it kills all the people, and you accept that they're ignorant of that history and they just want the most help for the most people, and them to finally feel like they have a groundswell of movement and they're all dancing and it actually is meaning something, and then to just get gunned down and to be woken up by the harsh reality that nothing ever changes and nothing ever will. And that high watermark, he talks about that in the movie in the middle of recovering from like a 3-day adrenochrome bender, and it's the plot of the movie is a journalist and his lawyer go to Las Vegas to cover a motorcycle race for a newspaper. And it's fucking perfect. Also, Gary Busey is ridiculous in it.
I mean, Gary Busey's basically in every movie since Point Break, just playing himself, and he's really good at it.
Dude, he's awesome. It's such a quirky film, and you can see all the eccentricities of Hunter S. Thompson, and Johnny Depp does the most. Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro in that movie should have won every award ever, but buy the ticket, take the ride. It's my Hunter S. Thompson tattoo.
I love it.
But yeah, best movie ever.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Skankfest. Where are all the places that people should find you?
Right now, I mean, so mike.is.eaton, E-A-T-O-N, on Instagram. I post a bunch of stories. I try and keep up where I'm at. I also post a lot of really good food pictures. I eat a lot of really good food. Got to keep this weight up so I stay funny. But yeah, Mike is Eaton on Instagram, and I've got a link tree on there that's got links to the podcast, my special, some merch, so all that stuff.
Nice, man. Well, I love you. I can't wait to see you at Skankfest. And if you get some free time, I do know the best all-you-can-eat sushi place in Vegas. So we'll head over there, and for $30, I'll treat. It's gonna blow your fucking mind.
I'm so fucking excited. That sounds amazing.
All right, man. Love you.
I love you too, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
All right, dude. We'll talk soon.
Fuck yeah.